Well, folks, obviously we are keeping tabs on this horrifying situation out of Idaho, during which at least 2 Idaho firefighters were murdered during an ambush on Sunday. The man suspected of killing those Idaho firefighters, of course, was found dead on Sunday with a gunshot wound, according to Daily Wire. The man was believed to have deliberately set a grass fire at Canfield Mountain in northern Idaho and then started shooting at firefighters when they responded. 2 firefighters were killed. A third is fighting for his life after sustaining serious injuries. The Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris didn't release any identifying information on the suspect. Here is what he had to say originally.
Okay, my name is Robert Norris. I am the Sheriff of Kootenai County. This information is very preliminary and is subject to change. We want to give you and the public as much information as quickly as possible. So at approximately 1:21 p.m. this afternoon, we received reports of a fire on the east side of Canfield Mountain. Fire assets responded to the scene, and at approximately 2 p.m. this afternoon, it was reported that firefighters were receiving shots fired at them. We now have 2 deaths. We have an unknown amount of casualties. We still have civilians that are coming off of that mountain. We might have civilians that are stuck or in shock on that mountain. So this is a very, very fresh situation. We are actively taking sniper fire as we speak. This is an active situation.
So, again, apparently what happened here is that there was a report of a fire. Once that fire was set, firefighters began arriving, and then this shooter started murdering the fire department officials and shooting at the rest of law enforcement as they were arriving. Norris said this is a total ambush. These firefighters did not have a chance. At one point, there were more than 300 law enforcement officers on the scene Sunday afternoon, including FBI agents. Law enforcement exchanged gunfire with the suspect. It was not known at that point whether he was killed by law enforcement or if he shot himself. The New York Post now has more information on the identity of the shooter. Again, we don't mention the names of mass shooters on the program because people who engage in mass shootings love nothing better than the publicity. However, what we do know is we have an eerie photo. It's a white guy. Eerie photo showing him aiming a sinister stare into the camera. And again, unclear at this point if he was killed by the cops or whether he shot himself. Obviously, the tragedy for the state of Idaho, for the country, is quite real and quite shocking. There's footage of a procession of law enforcement vehicles for the slain firefighters. Apparently, firefighters were calling 911. One firefighter said in a frantic call, "I'm pinned down. It's clear to me this fire was set intentionally to draw us in. We need law enforcement up here immediately. We have another Coeur d'Alene firefighter down. We've got 2 unresponsive battalion chiefs down, multiple gunshot wounds. 2 Coeur d'Alene are down." And then the fire was eventually left to burn as reinforcements battled to root out the unseen gunman, and then the body was tracked down using cell phone information. Again, unclear what the motive is here. There is some coincidence suggesting, at the very least, that there may be an association between this particular shooting, and it's a terrorist attack, and a decades-old incident, according to the New York Post, involving the fire department and neo-Nazis. Sunday's incident happened 24 years to the day after the 2001 burning of an Aryan Nations compound in Hayden Lake, just 7 miles north of Coeur d'Alene, during a fire training operation. That's because the cabin and the compound had been sold to the department after the Aryan Nations national leader, Richard Butler, filed for bankruptcy over a settlement involving the shooting of a Native American woman and her son, and then the site was torched by the fire department during a training exercise. So could these 2 things be associated? We don't know at this point. We'll continue to bring you information as it emerges. Obviously, acts of evil are acts of evil. This is a tremendous act of evil. And we do live in a sick time when, depending on the justification of the shooter, some people will celebrate it. We know this. We know that if the fire department officials were murdered because someone had a complaint about systemic racism in America, there'd be a cadre of Americans who would rise behind that. We know that because Luigi Mangione is now a household name. If they're complaining about capitalism. If, however, this was a person who was either psychotic or a white supremacist, you're not going to find anybody coming out in their defense. Now, the rule should be no one comes out in defense of this sort of activity, no matter the supposed justification or excuse making by the shooter and or any sympathizers. All right. Meanwhile, we need to talk about the fact that the scavengers are on the move. So I've talked to you about this fact that this book, Lions and Scavengers, is coming out very shortly. You can pre-order that over at the Daily Wire shop right now. Get a copy. Scavengers are people who wish to simply tear down the society in which they live. And they have very little in common with one another other than that simple fact. They just want to tear down everything. And it explains the bizarre agglomeration of radicals from across the political spectrum who seem to gather together to rally against our civilization. And we saw a lot of that this weekend. So, for example, here is a march that took place to end Pride Month in Ireland. A drag queen with flags of Arab countries and children marching in Ireland. There's a Palestinian flag being waved by a drag queen in Ireland. Now again, how do you put all that together? And there are children in the crowd and all the rest. How do you put all that together? I mean, obviously, there are no queers in Palestine. So queers for Palestine is a very weird look. Or how about Toronto Pride? So Toronto Pride had a parade in which they were flying Iranian flags. Remember, Iran is a place that hangs gay people from cranes. And yet here were people running around with flags reading Free Iran, presumably from American and Israeli intervention against their nuclear program. I assume that these Freedom for Iran stands are not actually calling for the fall of the Ayatollahs. It'd be rather a shock if they were at this point.
Where's a helmet?
Okay, or maybe this particular Omnicause flag. So this one has been making the rounds. So you remember the Rainbow Pride flag, the one that we used to recognize 10, 15 years ago, the Rainbow flag. And then there was the Pride Progress flag, in which you had, sort of from the side, arrows coming in form of the trans flag, the white, pink, and blue. And then added to that were black and brown, because of course there are trans people who are black and brown. And then you had intersex people who are added as a yellow. And now they've added on top of that a heart containing the Palestinian flag, because all the causes are one. The Omnicause has finally come together. And that Omnicause is just the scavenger mentality. It's all the people from the Jean-Paul Sartre hatred of Western civilization left to the queer pride left, who have decided that they are going to band together to destroy the civilization that we all share. And you could see it in action a little bit earlier over the weekend during the so-called Glastonbury Festival, when a member of the British rap punk duo Bob Vylan got up and started chanting, as we talked about on yesterday's show, death, death to the IDF, and suggesting you want your country back, well, basically F off. You don't get to get your country back.
I got this one.
So, the State Department of the United States has now taken a measure with regard to this. And the measure is that visas for Bob Vylan have been revoked in light of their hateful tirade at Glastonbury, including leading the crowd in death chants. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Chris Landau said that foreigners who glorify violence and hatred are not welcome visitors to our country. Now again, that makes perfect sense. There's no reason why we should be deporting these people to our country, especially when they may end up as mayor of New York. Which brings us to Zohran Mamdani. So for all of those who keep pretending that Zohran Mamdani is sort of a normie Democrat who just has some progressive leanings, no, he is not. He's the apex predator of the intersectional scavenger coalition. He is a person perfectly comfortable talking about spending $65 million in New York City to trans the kids, but also talking about free Palestine and globalize the Intifada, but also talking about how it is deeply important and deeply necessary to seize the means of production. He's not hiding the ball at all here. He is a representative of a left that has lost touch of reality and is now running specifically and solely in order to denigrate and destroy the civilization in which it lives. That is the goal of this thing. Here is Zoran Mamdani marching at New York City Pride with Letitia James. Again, Letitia James is the extraordinarily corrupt Attorney General of the state of New York who decided before even investigating Donald Trump that he needed to be prosecuted. There he is, walking the Pride Parade, your next mayor of New York. A person who also said that, quote-unquote, Palestine must be free, by which he means ruled, presumably, by Hamas, for whom he has sympathy. And none of these pieces fit together unless you understand that they are all directed at destroying a thing, not at actually building a thing. So over the weekend, he was on NBC with Kristen Welker, and he was asked about the phrase globalize the intifada, which he continues to seize upon and use. Now, understand, the term intifada means violent uprising. That is how the term was coined. It is a term for a violent uprising, particularly against Israel. Globalizing the intifada means that you want an extension of a violent uprising all across the West. That is what you want. Intifada means what it means. And the sort of retconning that you're saying now where intifada just means, you know, some sort of nice, gentle struggle in the same way that jihad. Remember this, if you're old enough, that in the early 2000s, when jihadists were calling for jihad, there were a whole group of moron Westerners who were suggesting that jihad just meant internal struggle. There are some people who are trying to recast globalizing the intifada as a non-violent event as well. Mamdani, why don't you just stop saying globalizing the intifada? And he said he's not going to, because free speech. And by the way, I'm just going to point out, no one is saying he can't say globalizing the intifada. He can say whatever he wants. It's a free country, and shame on us. He's a citizen of the country. He didn't have to be, but he is a citizen of the country. So, that's not the question. The question is not whether he ought to be allowed to say globalize the intifada as an American citizen. He is allowed to say globalize the intifada as an American citizen. The question is it a good or moral thing to say? And one of the last refuges of cowards these days is to pretend that your free speech is being violated when you are criticized for saying something bad. In any case, here's Mamdani trying to defend himself again and again. 3 separate times in this interview, he says that he's not going to walk away from globalizing the intifada, a call for violent uprising against Western civilization.
So I want to give you an opportunity to respond here and now. Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the intifada?
That's not language that I use. The language that I use and the language that I will continue to use to lead this city is that which speaks clearly to my intent, which is an intent grounded in a belief in universal human rights.
Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the intifada, which a lot of people hear as a call to violence against Jews?
I've heard from many Jewish New Yorkers who have shared their concerns with me, especially in light of the horrific attacks that we saw in Washington, D.C. and in Boulder, Colorado, about this moment of anti-Semitism in our country and in our city.
Why not just condemn it?
My concern is to start to walk down the line of language and making clear what language I believe is permissible or impermissible takes me into a place similar to that of the president who is looking to do those very kinds of things, putting people in jail for writing an op-ed, putting them in jail for protesting. Ultimately, it's not language that I use, it's language I understand there are concerns about, and what I will do is showcase my vision for the city with my words and my hands.
Utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. It's not language that he uses, but he won't condemn that. Because then he would be in the same universe as, God forbid, Donald Trump, who says that actually it's bad to use that kind of language. By the way, his own father has suggested, 2021, quote, the resistance this time began in Jerusalem and spread to Gaza, now the West Bank and Palestinian communities beyond. This is not a conflict between Israel and Hamas. We are witnessing something far more meaningful, the birth of the third intifada against settler colonialism. And this guy's a professor at Columbia University, so you can see exactly where Zoran Mamdani came from. But again, what is he? He is a merger of pro-jihadi leftism, a sort of cultural Maoism, a communist vision of economics, and an anti-traditional version of social politics. All of those things combined together in a sort of witch's brew of nastiness designed, again, against the civilization that has made him now a famous person and made his parents very wealthy, famous left-wingers. Zoran Mamdani believes, for example, that the third world is essentially our guide. If you grew up in the third world, you have a vision of what things like pre-Palestine is.
So the third holy grail of taboos in American politics, you have socialism, you have Islam, and then you have Palestine. And you are really going for the trifecta.
Let's go, baby.
So let's go. Tell me, why is Palestine a part of your politics?
When you grow up as someone, especially in the third world, you have a very different understanding of the Palestinian struggle.
Okay, first of all, he moved to the United States when he was either 7 or 8. Second of all, the kind of pathetic attempt to reach out to fellow third worlders, as he puts it, by eating rice with his hands, as though this is a necessity in American politics, because he is from a, I mean, he is claiming, essentially, membership in a foreign vision. That's what he's doing. And he's embracing Islam, socialism, and free Palestine. But by the way, he's marching in pride parades. In the same way that Ilhan Omar will do that. You think that Ilhan Omar is very fond of pride parades? Or Zoran Mamdani, if he really is a religious Muslim in any serious way? Because religious Muslims typically not so hot, as it turns out, in pride process. What it really is about, in the end, as always, scavengers seek to tear things down. This is what they want to do. Again, Mamdani isn't hiding the ball here. He says that people ought to be unapologetic about their socialism and BDS and seizing the means of production. So for all those who keep saying he's not a communist, seizing the means of production is literal communism. That is literal Marxism.
And we have to ensure that we are unapologetic about our socialism. There are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right, or whether it's the end goal of seizing the means of production, where we do not have the same level of support at this very moment. And what I want to say is that it is critical that in the way that we organize, in the way that we set up our work and our priorities, that we do not leave any one issue for the other.
Right, all the issues have to be brought together. All of them. BDS, meaning boycott, divestment, and sanctioning Israel. Seizing the means of production, full-scale communism. Socialism. All those things have to be advanced together, according to Zoran Mamdani. He appeared again on NBC with Kristen Welker, and he said, I don't think that New York City should have billionaires. Should not have billionaires.
Maybe we should
Well, that's
shoot
weird, because I
back.
think that New York City shouldn't have socialists. In fact, I think America shouldn't have socialists. I think that socialism is an evil philosophy. A philosophy that is rooted in jealousy, envy, hatred for people who
I
earn.
guess we're going this way.
A bizarre belief that the good things in life naturally occur in the world and are not made by human hands or human invention. But Zoran Mamdani believes that you have sinned by dint of being too successful in your business, and therefore, you need to be punished.
Something about this one.
Do you think that billionaires have a right to exist?
I don't think that we should have billionaires because, frankly, it is so much money in a moment of such inequality. And ultimately, what we need more of is equality across our city and across our state and across our country. And I look forward to work with everyone, including billionaires, to make a city that is fairer for all of us.
He is so vicious. And I gotta say, he kind of smug, he's smiling, he's taunting. When you say to me, when you say there shouldn't be billions, what you are saying is that you have the right, Zoran Mamdani, to steal the money of people who have worked hard for that money and built businesses that have helped presumably millions of other people. And you get to steal it and take it for yourself so that you can then distribute it as you see fit. Now listen, everybody can be equal. We can have no billionaires. You know, there are lots of places on earth that have no billionaires, because everyone's poor. Okay, if you're not talking about an oligarchy like Russia, where actual resources are physically distributed from the government to specific friends of the government. You're very much the free market system, where certain people earn more than other people. Yeah, you're going to have some billionaires, and those billionaires are going to create jobs for millions of other people, products and services. Lots of other people want to buy. They're going to create new innovation. They're going to bring costs down. They're going to bring wages up through competition. That is the history of capitalism. But according to Zoran Mamdani, he needs to personally seize the means of production and destroy the billionaires, destroy them. And that sits very comfortably along the same kind of people who wish to destroy traditional morality, destroy churches. Again, it's all about the destruction. The same kinds of people who wish to destroy successful countries because those countries are doing too well in other parts of the world. And that's why Israel has to be stopped, because it's too successful. It's all part of that same ugly mosaic of anti-Westernism, and it's hideous. And I'm not sure what's more pathetic, frankly. Zoran Mamdani winning a New York City primary by winning a bunch of college-educated white dolts, or the very highly educated and intelligent Democrats, moderate Democrats, who are being cucked by Zoran Mamdani. And I mean that in the most colloquial sense. They're being cuckolded by him because they're watching their party stolen from them by Zoran Mamdani, and they are cheering it. They're sitting there and they are watching it and they are cheering it. Because, God forbid, they should have to stand up against Zoran Mamdani and his vicious agenda for even a smidgen of a moment and lose the support of the passionate advocates for social justice like the Zoran Mamdani. And here I'm calling out Ezra Klein. So Ezra Klein's been a guest on this program. He's recently a guest for his book Abundance. His book Abundance is all about the idea that if the Democrats wish to win, what they should be talking about is getting rid of things like over-regulation. They should be ensuring that people can develop more freely and easily to bring down housing costs, for example. They should get rid of the bureaucracy. He's sounding very much like a Republican. But Ezra Klein is declining to criticize Zoran Mamdani. Why? Well, because Zoran Mamdani, after all, has stood up against the powers that be. Ezra Klein was very upset that his Andrew Cuomo in the primary called out today Zoran Mamdani as anti-Israel. And Ezra Klein says, how dare you polarize the Democratic Party on this issue? Andrew Cuomo would not have any ground to stand on, quote-unquote, polarizing the party, if there were not a gigantic anti-Semitic wing of the Democratic Party that has now emerged and is seeking to take control. And Ezra Klein is angry that Andrew Cuomo even brought that up. What an absolute moral cowardice, truly, true moral cowardice. And I'm disappointed to say that, because again, I think Ezra's a smart guy, but this is really critical. It's not only vacuous, it's morally imbecile.
But the other thing that I actually closed it, that made for me that I would not like was the way he was from the campaign. Like, I'm a Jewish person. I have very, very deep feelings about what's happening in Israel and Gaza, and I found it so cynical, so repulsive, just such a vicious way to recognize both of Mamdani's ethnicity, but also, I don't know, what's happening in Gaza is a horror. People should be horrified. Like, the whole thing just struck me as gross. And I knew a lot of people for whom it read that way.
Okay, let me explain. Ezra Klein is not going to play the as a Jew card for the first time only when he is talking about defending a person who's wildly anti-Israel and uses phrases that talk about the destruction of the state of Israel, which is to say the murder of millions of Jews. That's not when Ezra Klein gets to bring out the as a Jew card. Ridiculous. He's offended by that. I'm more offended by the fact that Zoran Mamdani decides to murder Jews. That's even more offensive. And Andrew Cuomo pointing that out is significantly less offensive to me than Zoran Mamdani being in favor of those people. The guy literally did a rap in favor of the Holy Land Fund, members of the Holy Land Foundation, who fundraised for Hamas. He's a person who on October 8th condemned Israel. But Ezra Klein is very upset that Andrew Cuomo called out Zoran Mamdani because, you know, it read as this happened. That's what it read as. You know what? You guys deserve the party to go through. And there's something else happening inside the Democratic Party. Ezra Klein used to be the dumb hot thing inside the party. Ezra Klein and I are the same age, both 41 years old. 41, he's middle aged. 41, married for almost 20 years, have 4 kids. Ezra's exactly my age. We grew up, same generation. And now he's looking at people like Zoran Mamdani, who is legitimately almost a decade younger. And he's looking at the young Democrats, and he's really looking at 20-year-old Democrats. And he's saying, I don't want to be on the outs with these people. I need their love. I need them to think I'm one of the cool kids. I don't want to be one of these institutional Democrats who looks down their nose at the hot new socialist thing. I don't want to be one of those people who says no to the cool kids. I want to be, kind of like the cool older brother figure who massages them and says, no, sure, he's got a little excessive from time to time, but, what's wrong with that? He's young, he's full of pep and vinegar. And what I'm really offended by is people like Andrew Cuomo using these tropes, saying things like, why are you so anti-Israel for knowing he's a Muslim? So? In New York City happens to be one of the more Jewish cities in the country, just by demographics, obviously. Is that of no consequence when you're talking about the person who's going to run the city which has a huge problem with hate crimes against Jews in it right now.
An enemy has been slain.
Absolutely pathetic, but he's not the only one. Molly Jong-Fast is doing the same thing. She's out there claiming that Mamdani's messaging on economic populism is just great. Just great. Again, she's supposed to be the voice of what? The moderates? Molly Jong-Fast?
And what I've been really surprised by is how Democrats have had so much trouble messaging on economic populism, when in fact most of their proposals are actual economic populism. And we're watching this votorama right now, which will get. I mean, by the way, the numbers in this bill: 150 billion boost to military spending. Okay, adding food stamps and Medicaid, closing rural hospitals. I mean. So, like, Republicans are not doing economic populism.
No. She writes the bold, and we should take her seriously. As sort of moderate voice of Democrats. The moderate voice of Democrats are running into the hill. Instead, the high MSNBC, CNN, is openly embracing the radicalism of Zoran Mamdani. If you don't embrace the scavenger movement, then that means you have to actually oppose the scavengers. Opposing the scavengers means defending your civilization, and too many on the left are unwilling to do this. Pablo Torre, but I have no idea, again, why Pablo Torre is now being asked about his policy. Pablo Torre, last I checked, is some sort of sports commentator. But here he was on MSNBC. Crazy. Incredibly savvy Mamdani for refusing to condemn globalizing.
I found him to be incredibly savvy, actually, in how he answered that, Caddy, both for the reasons you said, but also because of clearly who he's talking to. He's trying to build a coalition, use that word, cohesiveness on the left. And he knows that the people he's trying to persuade that, look, I'm not your typical candidate, is in fact a population of people that do not see the ideological, or in this case, the verbal, the rhetorical purity test in the same way. That I think people who understandably, by the way, just wanted to condemn it, right? I understand that completely, but Molly, he is playing a bit of chess here.
It's chess now. It's chess. He's sophisticated by being a complete garbage heap. It's just sophistication. Over at The New Yorker, John Cassidy has a piece about the magic of the economics of Zoranomics. Do you mean like the Cuban-style socialism that he is now proposing?
Easy peasy.
Well, apparently, according to The New Yorker, again, this is the voice of mainstream Democrats, the answer is that he's doing an amazing job. Isabella Weber is quoted, a professor of economics at University of Massachusetts Amherst, who signed a public letter endorsing Mamdani's campaign proposals, said that Mamdani is right. In an open letter, which The Nation published a few days before the primary, more than 24 progressive economists from the United States and other countries described Mamdani's policy platform as a, quote, bold yet practical blueprint to tackle some of New York City's social challenges. Above all, the cost of living. Again, the idea here is that if you provide a bold socialist critique of capitalism, somehow socialism becomes better. So what are mainstream Democrats doing? Well, either they're doing the Ezra Klein thing and saying, well, you know, they're anti-Mamdani. Even if they're not pro-Mamdani, they're anti-Mamdani. People attack Mamdani. They're a problem, not Mamdani. Or they're simply dodging. So, MSNBC's Caddy K notes that Democrats are getting a sort of generic dodge when asked about Zoran Mamdani.
Okay, similar to what we just heard from Congresswoman Stevens, we spoke to a pair of Democrats last week, both of whom gave a strikingly similar answer when asked about Zoran Mamdani. There is a pattern emerging here.
Okay, well, yes, there is a pattern. The pattern is they're going to avoid. Because they don't actually have the stones to stand up against this thing. Okay, fine. Well, you will be eaten by that thing, and you deserve to be eaten by that thing. You do. And by the way, the Republicans are going to continue to gain ground if you guys decide to follow Zoran Mamdani and AOC down this rabbit hole. President Trump isn't listening. President Trump is listening. If Zoran Mamdani becomes mayor of New York, and if he decides, for example, that he's going to obstruct ICE agents in their pursuing the enforcement of the law, well, then I'll just withhold federal funds from New York City. And by the way, I'm in favor. Good. Because I'm not sure why my taxpayer money should go to fund a city that chose Zoran Mamdani precisely.
What did you make of the New York Democrat primary? Mamdani.
He's a communist. I think it's very bad for New York. I don't know that he's going to get any inconceivable, but he's a communist and he's a pure communist. I think he admits it. but I can't imagine it. But let's say this: if he does get in, I'm going to be president, and he's going to have to do the right thing, or they're not getting any money. He's got to do the right thing. It's shocking that I would have assumed that I used to say we will never have a socialist in this country. No, but we'll have a communist. I mean, he's a communist. He's going to be mayor of New York. So I was very surprised when I said, I never heard of him. I don't know who he is.
Well, he said he's going to fight ICE. He's not going to allow ICE to...
He'll be very unsuccessful.
And he said if Benjamin Netanyahu comes to New York, he's going to have him arrested.
Oh, he's a radical left lunatic.
Yes, yes, he is. And if Democrats want to do this, well, they're going to get exactly what they're paying for. They break it, they bought it. And by the way, it is worthwhile noting this is just another reason why the Trump administration is cracking down on the world of education because of the left as well as public. And this is how you end up with John Munger. This is how you end up with young people who don't understand how capitalism works, who believe that somehow free Palestine is morally worthwhile as it calls for the rule of an entire group of people by terrorists who believe that somehow it's better for the American people for drag queens to read to children. It takes a group of very highly educated idiots, as my friend Dennis Prager used to say, in order to believe this sort of stuff. It's also why these teachers' unions, which promote this sort of stuff, are deeply ensconced in the belief that they own your children. Here, for example, is teachers' union president in Chicago, Stacey Davis Gates, saying that teachers own your kids.
Baldwin says the children are always ours. Always. Every single one of them, all over the globe. And what comes next is, CTU think your children are its children. Yes, we do.
Say, they think your children are their children and they're going to adopt their children. In the same kind of crap, Zohar Mamdani was educated by both his parents and by his educational institutions. That is why I'm so very much puzzled with the Trump administration using the tools of the civil rights to slap down his institutions of higher education that have become propaganda factories on behalf of the rest. So yesterday, the Trump administration, DOJ, notified Harvard that they were still in violation of the Civil Rights Act. In a letter sent by the DOJ, particularly Harvey Dillon, Attorney General for Civil Rights, who's terrific. Disclosure, Harvey's acted as a lawyer in the past. Here at Daily Wire, particularly in the case in which we actually sued the Biden administration for violation of the law by using OSHA to ram down a vax mandate for 80 million people. In that letter, Harvey wrote, Harvard holds the regrettable distinction of being among the common individual ingredients of race discrimination. That legacy of discrimination persists with Harvard's continued anti-Semitism. Any institution that refuses to meet federal law may not receive the wide range of federal privileges. Today, the Joint Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism is notifying you the Office for Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has concluded its Title VI investigation regarding anti-Semitism at Harvard University. After a thorough investigation, HHS and PCR found that Harvard University is in violent violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin. The enclosed notice of violation details the findings of fact supporting that conclusion. For example, the majority of Jewish students reported experiencing negative bias and discrimination on campus. A quarter felt physically unsafe. Jewish and Israeli students were assaulted and spit on. They hid their kippahs for fear of being harassed and concealed their Jewish identity from classmates for fear of ostracization. Images were widely circulated among the Harvard community, trafficking in obvious various anti-Semitic tropes, including one showing a dollar sign inside a Star of David, and all the rest. Harvard did not dispute our findings of fact, by the way, says the DOJ, nor could it. Harvard's inaction in the face of these civil rights violations is a clear example of the demographic hierarchy that has taken hold of the university, and this is exactly right. Assistant Attorney General of Civil Rights Harvey Dillon also said that University of Virginia is acting in violation of the Civil Rights Act. Here she was.
I haven't gotten anything in writing from UVA. Unlike many of the other institutions of higher learning, I've had chancellors come meet me. I've had lawyers come meet me. They've given us reams and reams of documents, not UVA.
They just didn't respond at all?
They've asked for extensions and extensions and extensions.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the troubling aspects here. And I think the concern, and we began to hear from people we're negotiating with, that UVA was unable to certify that it was in compliance with these laws. And so, but to your point, they actually did, I would call it using a series of euphemisms to simply rebrand and repackage the exact same discriminatory programs that are illegal under federal law. And my job as the top federal civil rights law enforcer in the country is to make sure that every school that receives federal funding is compliant with federal law.
Now, all of this, of course, has international connotations. We mentioned that punk duo Bob Vylan and the Glastonbury Festival, in which, again, they were chanting death, death to the IDF, and yelling at people saying, so you say you want to keep your country? And we say, F you, essentially. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who grew up with Islamists, has a fabulous piece over at the Free Press, pointing out what is happening worldwide. She says what happened at Glastonbury over the weekend is part of a coordinated ideological insurgency against the Jewish people. Not just against the Israeli military, not just against Israel, not just against Zionism, against Jews. Jews are no strangers to accusations of secret plots, banking plots, media plots, world domination. They're always scheming, according to the people who can't stop obsessing over them. What's unfolding now is a real plot, not being orchestrated by Jews, but against them, and it's happening in broad daylight. Ayaan Hirsi Ali writes. She says what makes this moment uniquely dangerous is the merging of two ideologies that historically have operated in very different arenas, Islamism and Maoism. The former is fueled by absolutist theocracy and tribal vengeance, the latter by class war and ideological conformity. One invokes the divine, the other pretends to be secular. Both demand submission. Islamism seeks to restore a 7th century caliphate through bombs, blood, and barbarity. Maoism seeks to flatten all hierarchies under the boot of equity, enforced through surveillance, humiliation, and fear. One dreams of paradise after death, the other promises utopia after sufficient political and social purges, but both share a core instinct: crush the infidel, purge the impure, seize control of the narrative. Islamism brings the fire, holy rage of fixation on martyrdom, a visceral hatred for Jews that predates the state of Israel by centuries. Maoism brings the strategy, the long march through institutions, the cultural struggle sessions, the rewriting of history, the reframing of reality through social media and sound bites. And she's right about this. She says Maoist frameworks like decolonization and privilege provide the ideological cover, abstract enough to sound academic, blunt enough to justify destruction. And again, this is why the sort of Free Palestine movement is the tip of the spear here. It is the consolidation point for all of these things. Because in the hatred of Israel, in that hatred is hatred of what so many people on the left see as the point of the spear of Western civilization in a non-Western part of the world. That's what Israel is to the so-called anti-colonialists. That is why you are seeing the scavengers marching together. It's why Zoran Mamdani is their candidate of choice. And it's why a democratic left that can't stand up to it has no business retaining power, even inside its own party. And so it won't. It will fall apart, and the scavengers will take complete control of the Democratic Party because there are no lions left inside the Democratic Party to stand up against them. Meanwhile, sometime this week, Republicans are going to pass the big, beautiful bill. I understand there's a lot of heartburn over vote-a-ramas and negotiations. It's going to pass. The reason it's going to pass is because if it doesn't pass, Republicans are in serious, serious trouble. That's just the reality. So there's going to be a lot of swapping, a lot of bargaining in the Senate. It'll go to the House, and House Speaker Johnson is going to find a way to ram that through. Because if that doesn't happen, then President Trump's presidency is in serious, serious trouble. The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, makes the point that the big, beautiful bill represents an 11% cut in discretionary spending. Here he was defending the bill.
I think everyone believes that this is a start. So it's an 11% cut in non-discretionary spending, and we're going to go from there. So we didn't get here all at once. We've gotten here 20 or 40 years, and we are going to bend the curve, bring the debt levels down. I'm a fiscal hawk. I've had a lot of very good meetings with that group, and I think we're all on the same page on how to grow the economy while controlling and bringing down expenses.
And so, again, he's right about this, and I will say it again. The reality is there is not support inside the United States Senate sufficient to radically reduce spending in terms of reshaping Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, which is where the real spending is going on in the American budget. National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett is also, of course, touting the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. Here he was explaining.
What America gets for the Big Beautiful Bill is border security, national security, an extra $10,000 in the pocket of the typical American family, no tax on overtime, no tax on tips. We've got 90 million American workers that are hourly workers that are going to see that extra overtime that they're getting paid go straight into their pockets. And all of this is going to happen if we pass the bill. If we don't pass the bill, the Council of Economic Advisors here at the White House has said that it's going to cause GDP to drop 4%, one of the biggest recessions in history because of a massive tax hike. And honestly, that's why this bill is going to pass.
Okay, and he's not wrong about this. The threat of the bill going under, meaning a radical increase in taxes on Americans and American business, that enough is going to scare Republicans into compliance. Senator Ron Johnson, who of course is a longtime holdout on this bill, he has now switched his vote. He is in favor. Here he was explaining that to Fox News.
My biggest problem is that we really weren't returning spending to a reasonable pre-pandemic level. But through multiple meetings with President and his economic advisors, I'm convinced that they are committed to returning to a reasonable pre-pandemic level spending, and I'll be highly involved in a process to achieve and maintain it. So that's at the crux. But specifically on Saturday night, Rick Scott, who is an expert at healthcare, I don't think anybody knows more about it than he, has an amendment that wasn't included in the base bill, and we're fighting to get it in there to remove the most damaging part of Obamacare on Medicaid. Nobody in the Republican Party is trying to impact Medicaid for the disabled children. We're concerned about the Obamacare addition to it.
Okay, so, again, there are plenty of good reasons for him to switch his vote. I'll just point out that Senator Johnson has not radically restructured the spending. We're not back at 2019 levels, which is what he wanted, because, again, that was never going to happen. That is not the direction in which this is going to move. There were not the votes sufficient for that. Now, Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina has announced that he will be stepping down, which means he's no longer interested in being leveraged by President Trump or by the Vice President J.D. Vance. So he's out against the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. Here he was slamming it.
It is inescapable that this bill in its current form will betray the very promise that Donald J. Trump made in the Oval Office or in the cabinet room when I was there with finance, where he said we can go after waste, fraud, and abuse on any programs. Now, those amateurs that are advising him, not Dr. Oz, I'm talking about White House healthcare experts, refuse to tell him that those instructions that were to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse all of a sudden eliminates a government program that's called the provider tax. We have morphed a legal construct that admittedly has been abused and should be eliminated into waste, fraud, and abuse.
Okay, so he went on a long tirade, did Thom Tillis, against the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. Is that going to kill the bill? In all likelihood, no. The president can afford to lose 3 votes. He will lose Tillis. He may lose Rand Paul. That's 2. Now the question is Murkowski, McConnell, a couple of the senators who are on the fence. Now, Tillis stepping down. He stepped out largely because of pressure from President Trump. That could have some long-term effects. North Carolina is, of course, a purple state. It has a Democratic governor in Josh Stein. And recently, a North Carolina Senate seat was lost because Republicans decided to run somebody with a really, really checkered past in Mark Robinson. Thom Tillis stepping down means that is a very competitive seat. So, if we ask our friends and sponsors at Perplexity, which are the most competitive seats in the 2026 race for the Senate, and what are the likely outcomes going to be? So, as Perplexity answers, the most competitive Senate races for 2026 are in Georgia, Michigan, New Hampshire, Minnesota, Maine, and North Carolina. Now, those battlegrounds, again, favor Republicans because the Senate races in Georgia, for example, that's a Democrat-held seat. The race in Michigan was a Democrat-held seat. New Hampshire was a Democrat-held seat.
It's probably worth shooting.
However, Maine is a Republican-held seat. Susan Collins is running there. That could be very competitive again. That state has been trending forward. Collins has been holding on to her seat relatively narrowly. That is one seat. And North Carolina is now a rare open seat, a purple seat. There's some other states that are up. Ohio, Alaska, Texas, Iowa, South Carolina. Those are states that President Trump won by double digits, Perplexity points out. They're considered long shots. So let's assume for a second the Democrats maintain Georgia, Michigan, New Hampshire, Minnesota, and say they win Maine and North Carolina. Republicans still retain control of the Senate because, again, they need to flip 4 Republican-held Senate seats. It's possible, in a sort of wild world, that Democrats would challenge maybe Ohio or Alaska or Texas or something. But that would be a pretty wild world. However, it does leave the Senate in a lot dicier situation because every vote counts. And so if that vote margin comes down to 52, now you're looking, for example, at a cadre of 3 Republicans who can kill any bill. If Republicans lose a couple of seats, and now they're down to 51, well, now they're in real trouble because you lose 2 seats and you can't pass anything. And that's assuming Republicans hold the House, which they may very well not. So again, herein lies one of the big problems. However, as far as the big beautiful bill is concerned, if it does not pass, it is going to be a serious, serious problem for President Trump. For sure. Speaking of which, again, it looks like the economy is still holding up because most investors seem to be betting that President Trump's tariff regime is coming to an end. It's moving in the right direction. According to Axios, the S&P 500 was on track to hit a new record on Friday. It sank when President Trump announced the termination of trade talks with Canada over a controversial digital services tax. Within an hour, investors decided not to care, and stocks closed at an all-time high for the first time since February. Why? Well, because the market is looking at President Trump's tariff record and saying it's probably likely that he's going to move away from those sorts of tariffs anyway. According to Axios, headline-driven volatility is a given under this administration, so don't let it impact your portfolio, advisors say. And on Sunday night, Canada did indeed scrap the tax that caused President Trump to withdraw from the negotiations. Jay Pulaski of TPW Advisors says he pays no attention to tariff policy anymore. Torsten Slok, the chief economist at Apollo, indicated President Trump might even be outsmarting everyone in a recent note, arguing any extension of the 90-day tariff pause, which Trump has signaled, would decrease uncertainty. So again, there's a lot of uncertainty that set in when President Trump announced Liberation Day, but it appears that the direction is all toward free trade and away from tariffs at this point, from those gigantic announced tariffs. And so the markets seem a lot more sanguine. All of which is leading the White House to press Jerome Powell over at the Federal Reserve to lower the interest rates again. So Caroline Leavitt went after Jay Powell again today.
And if you look at this chart, this is a chart of all of the interest rates of many countries throughout the world. At the top is Switzerland. They're only paying a quarter for interest rates. Cambodia, Japan, Denmark, Thailand, Botswana, Barbados, Taiwan, Bulgaria, Cuba, Sweden, Morocco, Cabo Verde, South Korea, Algeria, Canada, Albania, Libya, Malaysia, China, New Zealand, Trinidad and Tobago, Czechia, Bolivia, Australia, Costa Rica, the Bahamas, Kuwait, Papua New Guinea, Bosnia, United Kingdom, and the UAE are all paying lower interest rates than the United States of America, which has one of the hottest and strongest economies in the world. The President sent this note to the Fed chair. It says, Jerome, you are as usual too late. You have cost the USA a fortune and continue to do so. You should lower the rate by a lot. Hundreds of billions of dollars are being lost, and there is no inflation. And the President is right. There is historically low inflation thanks to his policies.
The President of the United States is calling for those lower interest rates. Powell is saying, listen, those may come, but I want to be a little cautious because I don't want to actually open the monetary floodgates while tariffs may in fact kick in. All the president has to do to end all of this and get the lower interest rates is actually just negotiate those off. That's it. And I assume that Scott Bessent's hard at work doing that right now. That plus the big beautiful bill, meaning the maintenance of current tax rates, means solidity in the economy, belief by investors that they're not going to be regulated out of existence, taxed out of existence, or inflated out of existence, and you will in fact see serious economic growth as a result. Meanwhile, the President of the United States continues to push forward with his immigration agenda. He is heading down to so-called Alligator Alcatraz in Florida to tour this controversial new detention facility in the Everglades. So according to Axios, the $450 million 1,000-bed facility with trailers and tents is the largest of its kind and solidifies Florida's position as the top state cooperating with President Trump's immigration crackdown. Of course, Governor DeSantis has been wanting to do that. The name and idea for Alligator Alcatraz is the brainchild of the Florida AG, Buchmeyer, who was appointed by DeSantis after serving as the chief of staff. He hatched a plan for alligator Alcatraz in their secret and worked with the SANS, Stubbs, and DHS to avoid any opposition before it was too late for significant opposition to actually materialize. It's surrounded by the wetlands of Big Cypress National Preserve next to Everglades National Park. It's basically dead center between the east and west coast of Florida. It's a one-runway airplane facility called Day Powell Training and Transition Area. It's not actually just like in the middle of the wetland, for example. Environmentalists are upset because they say that it's going to affect the Florida panther or whatever. But the federal and state governments say the environmental impacts will be minimal, and somewhere has to be the place for these folks. So President Trump is going to head down and visit again, campaigning strong on the idea that he closed the border, and now he's going to be deporting criminal illegal immigrants.
The extended warranty.
Meanwhile, the President of the United States continues to stand strong with regard to Iran and what happens next in the Middle East. So yesterday, the President reiterated, and you guys keep saying over and over and over that we didn't really destroy those Iranian nuclear facilities over at Fordo. Wrong you are. The bomb went through it like butter, says the President of the United States.
Do you think that the Iran regime hid some of the enriched uranium before the strikes?
No, did they take it out of the deep one? No.
Because you were pretty clear you can't have a weapon, you're going to have to come to the talk, something's going to happen.
I don't think they're good. No, I think, first of all, it's very hard to do. It's very dangerous to do. It's very heavy, very, very heavy. It's a very hard thing to do. Plus, we didn't give much notice because they didn't know we were coming until just, then. And nobody thought we'd go after that site because everybody said that site is impenetrable. You can't, you're not going to be able. That's why they did. It's at the bottom of a mountain. And it's granite. Granite's the hardest stone, and it's granite. So, no, they didn't. But I do believe they had people there because, cars. They were saying cars. And those were masons. Those were people working with concrete. They were trying to seal up the entrance to where the bomb would most likely go in. And they did that. They were working on that. And the bomb went through it like it was butter.
He's not wrong about that. He then adds that the new Middle East, wherein Iran's nuclear program has been defenestrated, means that there are a lot of countries that want to join the Abraham Accords. Actually, the country that is being mentioned most often at this point is Syria. Syria is now negotiating, apparently, with the Israelis and the Americans to join the Abraham Accords, the provisos being that Israel would give up some of the territory that it's currently holding in southern Syria as a bulwark against HTS and other terrorist groups in Syria, and that the United States will essentially guarantee any deal. Here's President Trump.
Has any other country suggested to you recently, as a result of this, that they want to join the Abraham Accords?
Yes. So we have some really great countries in there right now, and I think we're going to start loading them up because Iran was the primary problem. I actually thought Iran would. I actually thought we had a period of time where I thought Iran would join the Abraham Accords along with everybody else, and frankly, they would have been better off than where they are right now.
And what about the Abraham Accord with Syria?
Well, I don't know, but I did take off the sanctions at the request of some of the other countries in the area that are friends of ours. I took off the sanctions on Syria to give them a chance at, the sanctions are biting. They're very strong.
So, again, President Trump transforming the Middle East. Meanwhile, Iran's ambassador to the UN says that Iran's nuclear enrichment will never stop. So Iran's going to continue talking about this. And as President Trump has made clear, as the Israelis have made clear, listen, they get wind this is happening, there are more bombs coming.
So the enrichment is our right, an enable right, and we want to implement this right.
So you do plan to restart enrichment, that sounds like.
I think that enrichment will not never stop.
So, again, claiming it doesn't stop. Okay, well, good luck to you. But the reality is, quite Iran President Trump's press is extremely incredible. And as the IAEA chief dropout Mariano Grossi pointed out, Iran's capabilities have been destroyed to an important degree.
It's clear that what happened, in particular in Fordo, Natanz, Isfahan, where Iran used to have and still has some degree capabilities in terms of equipment, conversion, enrichment of uranium have been destroyed to an important degree. Some is still standing. So there is, of course, an important setback in terms of those capabilities.
Again, the President of the United States has transformed the Middle East. Next on the list, he's going to have to find a way for an off-ramp to be found between Russia and Ukraine. Of course, that was a pledge of the President. In order for that to happen, step up Ukraine, the United States is going to have to make clear that Ukraine will be funded sufficient to deter further Russian aggression, or Russia will continue to be aggressive. According to the Wall Street Journal, Russian forces are now 12 miles from Sumy, Ukraine, a northern Ukrainian regional capital, a new target for Moscow, as the Kremlin presses its manpower advantage at a growing number of places along the front. It almost entirely ejected Ukrainian forces from the Russian Kursk region earlier this year. Russian forces now poured over the border to Sumy. 50,000 troops in the area, they now outnumbered the Ukrainians roughly 3-1, according to the soldiers fighting with them. The main strategy, said General Alexander Syrskyi, Ukraine's top military commander, is to wear us down with their numbers. The Russian advance toward Sumy comes as President Trump has begun voicing growing frustration with the Kremlin's unwillingness to broker a ceasefire. The meetings between Ukrainian and Russian officials have continued in Turkey throughout recent weeks, and Moscow is stepping up its missile and drone attacks. Overnight on Sunday, Ukraine actually lost an F-16 jet fighter and its pilot during an aerial bombardment, the largest since the start of the war in terms of the number of munitions deployed. So the front line has now grown by more than 100 miles, and now more than 750 miles in the arc, from the northeast all the way down to the south. And so again, the Russians have sort of been stopped for the moment in Sumy, but now they're pouring in tens of thousands of more troops. And this is going to continue up until the point where Russia figures that they're not going to be able to dissuade the West from fighting back against Russia's aggression. President Trump has been moving in that direction. More movement would be absolutely salutary for the United States. That'd be a good thing. Alrighty, folks, so July 4th is coming up, and so one of the things that we've been doing is analyzing the myths about July 4th in the state of America. Today's myth we're going to debunk is the so-called separation of church and state. So first of all, you hear this all the time from people who are big advocates of radical left-wing secularism. America was a separation of church and state. So first of all, we should point out separation of church and state is not a phrase that appears anywhere in the United States Constitution or in the Declaration of Independence. It appears in a private law written by Thomas Jefferson in 1802. The First Amendment bars the establishment of a national religion. The Constitution of the United States says that essentially you can't be a Catholic doctrinal. That is not what the Constitution of the United States stands for. At the same time, you are supposed to be able to rely on your religious faith to inform your values, which then informs your vote, of course. And this is the thing the left has said. They said, well, you know, if you believe, for example, in the Ten Commandments, and the Ten Commandments being a part of school is bad in and of itself. It's a violation of the separation of church and state. No, it isn't. Not unless I'm telling you that you have to keep Jewish Sabbath or Christian Sabbath. Otherwise, that is not a violation of church and state. Okay? When it comes to church and state, the First Amendment governs. Here is the language of the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Okay, now, there are people who have tried to separate those two clauses. Clause number 1, Congress shouldn't make a law that establishes religion. And 2, Congress shouldn't prohibit people from performing their religion. But they're actually part of the same overall clause. The idea is the reason you're not establishing a religion, like say Catholicism or Protestantism or whatever, the reason you don't have a state church at the national level is because if you did, it would prohibit the free exercise of religion by people who are not members of that religion. That is why. But it was not meant to disestablish religion in general under American law. That's ridiculously silly. In fact, a huge number of states at the time of the founding had official religion. Remember, the federal government didn't have an official religion because the First Amendment was only supposed to apply to the federal government. Congress shall make no law of religion. That is about the federal government. There were many state governments at the time of the founding that actually did have religion. As Perplexity points out, 9 out of 13 had some form of religious test for office holders in their constitutions during the Revolutionary period. Typically, that meant that office holders had to affirm belief in Christianity, in many cases specifically Protestant Christianity. So in Delaware, for example, office holders had to profess faith in the Trinity and the divine inspiration of the Old and the New Testaments. Georgia, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New Jersey, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Vermont all limited office holders to Protestants. Virginia and New York did not require religious oaths in their New York considered Protestant until the early 1800s. And there were several states had officially established churches that provided government support directly to particular denominations, including Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Hampshire, in which the Congregational Church was established. Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, New Jersey, where the Church of England, or Protestantism, was established. South Carolina explicitly declared that Christian Protestant religion was an established religion and required Christian confessions of faith for church incorporation. So again, the idea of disestablishment entirely at the state level, the idea that none of this can be part of American law, it's not true. It's not true. Why? Because it turns out the Founding Fathers knew quite well that while they didn't want the federal government to establish a gigantic federal state religion, because there were states that actually disagreed with each other on these matters, they did not want to disestablish religion generally speaking. They understood the importance of religion. John Adams, 1798. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. My favorite quote. George Washington Farewell's address in 1796, quote, "Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable support." So this idea the founders were wildly anti-religion, the early America was wildly anti-religion, obviously untrue on the basis of all verifiable facts. Alrighty, time to jump into the mailbag. Doug says, "Hey Ben, I know you're a huge Star Wars fan, and like most of us, have been extremely underwhelmed by most of the shows and movies since Disney has taken over. I implore you to watch and review Andor. It is fantastic. Excellent acting, great sets and cinematography, the singular vision of an expert screenwriter Tony Gilroy, along with Rogue One, I think is the best piece of content put out by Disney iteration of Star Wars. So I've been trying to make my way through it. Honestly, I'm so busy, I haven't had time to watch it. My wife got into it. We are near the end of season 1. I've heard season 1 is good, and I've heard season 2 is absolutely phenomenal. I hear that from producer Zach, who is sort of my go-to guy when it comes to Star Wars. I trust his judgment on that. His judgment is basically impeccable on this sort of stuff. I know he's glowing right now just listening to this. So, the reality is, I will check that out, but so far so good. Bright says, "Dear Ben, I was raised in a Christian household, going to church on Sundays and participating in Bible study. One thing I've always wanted to do is read the Bible and play through. I started reading the book of Genesis, so I always get bogged down in the use of language when I was in church. Which book of the Bible would you recommend helping me get started? Which book do you think is the most relatable, interesting, and reads easily like a story? Thanks for all you do." The first half of Exodus, before you get to all the laws, there's part of the book of Numbers that really read. And obviously, there are parts of Genesis that are great. I mean, I think that when you're talking about the genealogies, it's hard to read the genealogy. You get to the gap section, the first couple of chapters of Genesis.
An ally has been slain.
When you get to the Gat section, it starts to get a little bit hard slogging. But once you get past that sort of stuff, it gets really interesting. Kyle Tibet, Senator Cotton said in his book that if China takes Taiwan, the U.S. would see a depression worse than the depression. There's a chance of about 50% China makes a move on Taiwan in the next 5 years. In the next 5 years, I'm going to go at least 50%. Because it seems to me that China has been boxed its own game. And it's a serious debt problem. They hide that debt by stuffing it into every nook and cranny of their provincial and local taxes. They have a serious demographic problem. Their economy is wildly what they're reporting. And beyond that, if the United States does build up and create some trade relations around China, if China feels boxed in, they might try to go for Taiwan. Would that be a massive great threat? Yes. I mean, as things currently stand, a cutoff in the supply of microchips from Taiwan, or the destruction of TSMC on Taiwan, would lead to a global Great Depression. It would be significant, really significant. It would make the Great Recession. Rob says, "Ben, love the show. What will it take for federal legislators to even attempt to address the drivers of our country's national debt? The battle cry is Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid off the table. How long can the dollar survive as the world's state currency? It seems there's little interest in modernizing these programs, much less converting them to fiscally viable entities. I'll begin to run Social Security in about 5 months. When I start getting 79 cents, $71. Well, that is the question. And the answer, presumably, when we have to either radically increase taxes or radically increase our inflation to pay off the sort of expenditures we're making on the social program. I'd imagine sometime in the next year, we will hit the skids. When that happens, one of 3 choices available: inflating the currency, radically increasing our taxes, or austerity programs designed to restructure these massive investments. There is no fourth choice. Assuming, of course, that people don't continue to buy our debt. sort of are right now, but again, the dollar, the world's reserve currency, has been dropping. 15 years ago, 80% of the world's reserve currency was the American dollar. Today, it's 60% seems to be headed to the wrong way. Ryan says, I have a bunch of Persian friends from UCS, all electrical engineers. All of them are I'm wondering if there's a chance for Iran to rebuild mountains into a great place for investment. For example, the Shiraz region is a great region for wine. Persian onion people, everybody in mind. They're great. The question is, are they willing to overthrow their government? If they are willing to overthrow their government and establish some form of government that respects private property rights, then absolutely. This is the when you travel abroad, spending some time traveling abroad lately, when you travel abroad, the thing that matters most, that you see, and you see it in terms of prosperity, are basic things that guarantee private property rights. Regulatory structures that aren't insane, tax structures that aren't insane. You do those basic things, you have good government that isn't wildly corrupt. And you will see a boom. You do not do those things, and you will see economic stagnation. It really is that simple. That is the magic of free markets and capitalism, private property. Steven says, hey Ben, do you think President Trump anticipated Chinese retaliation and planned to escalate tariffs in response? I also noticed Taiwan was recognized in the tariff schedule, clearly a provocative move. From China's perspective, I'd really appreciate your take on what you think the Trump White House views as the core of China's strategy. That seems to be a regarding China. On the one hand, but he's also believing, for example, Congress says the fact we're supposed to be ghetto when it comes to rare earth minerals. We keep backing off because of our dependence on Chinese rare earth minerals. We need to get off of that. So it's a bit of a mixed bag right now, for sure. Tal says, hey Ben, I was wondering if you have any thoughts on how to address the challenge posed by the Orthodox Jewish community in Israel. As you know, the secular and traditional population pays taxes and serves in the army. Many Orthodox Jews not only avoid these responsibilities, but often openly express disdain for the state of Israel. Of course, this doesn't apply to all of them. Orthodox Jews itself is clear the issue is growing. So first of all, I should distinguish here between the people who would be called Harvim, the ultra-Orthodox in sort of American parlance, and the people who would be Hester Yeshiva guys, meaning people who serve in the army and also learn Torah and all of that. The way that you can tell this, if you ever visit Israel, people were at the Castle Gama, the yarmulke that they developed. It seems to be one of the key distinctions. Their political power, says Tal, seems disproportionate to their actual numbers, largely because they vote as a bloc, following the directives of their leaders. This guarantees them political influence. Additionally, they seem to actively counterbalance the Arab parties, which further cements their role in coalition politics. I know many good right-wing Zionists are deeply frustrated by the situation, myself included, and are even considering leaving the country out of this matter of So first of all, I don't think very there will be changes in the coalitional structure. Because there are so many parties that are sort of center-right will not see and they change in the aftermath of the Iran strikes. If Gaza reaches terminus, the Prime Minister Netanyahu achieves the Abraham Accords, he decides to retire, he's 6 years old. There are a lot of things that can happen here. Sort of natural coalition in Israeli politics goes all the way from the sort of Hester parties that are existing in the outside the Green Line in Israel, all the way on the right to parties that are on the center left, like say Benny Gantz's party, and that coalition is probably 75 to 80 seats, meaning 2/3 of the Knesset. So yes, it's a major issue. I think it's an issue that actually is going to take care of itself. Maybe I'm optimistic. I think it will take care of itself over the next few years. Max says, hey Ben, I've been interested in studying the differences between Eastern and Western thought, ideology, and ways of living. I'd like to better understand what separates the West from the East. Do you have any books or resources you recommend on this topic? On the West, I mean, again, you're talking about, I would recommend the Durant series, the Will Durant series on education, on civilization. It's sort of the classic of the genre. There's volumes that are about Eastern cultures, volumes that are about Western cultures, and about all the in-betweens. There really are gradations. It's not like there's a hard line that separates. There's some shaded areas in world population that kind of span between.
On Matt Walsh Show, we talk about the things that really matter, real issues that affect you, your family, and our country, not just politics, but also out for Matt Walsh stream on Daily Wire Plus, 1:30 Eastern Time. See you there.
Unless it's to talk.
Your team has destroyed an inhibitor. Your team has destroyed an
Alrighty, folks, so the wins keep coming for President Trump. On Saturday night, Senate Republicans finally passed their version of the big, beautiful bill, the one big, beautiful bill. This is the tax bill that is going to retain President Trump's tax cuts from 2017. It is also going to provide funding for building the wall and other immigration enforcement matters. It is going to provide certain subsidies in certain areas, going to take away subsidies in other areas. The vote was incredibly close. Two GOP senators, Rand Paul of Kentucky, of course, and Tom Tillis of North Carolina, who opposed some of the cuts to future spending in Medicaid in particular. They opposed, but the bill passed 51-49 in terms of starting debate on the legislation. That means that in all likelihood, this bill is going to come to a vote in the House of Representatives sometime this week. President Trump's goal of getting this thing done by July 4th is going to be kept, according to Politico. The vote came after a day-long scramble by GOP leaders to win over several Republican senators who were viewed as undecided or who had vowed to block debate over their opposition to pieces of the bill, including an extended negotiating session that unfolded with various senators and Vice President J.D. Vance while the vote was underway. Now, again, Senator Ron Johnson, who's been a guest on the program, of Wisconsin, he had opposed the bill. He apparently won a promise of an amendment vote related to the expansion of Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act. That proposal would end the 90% federal cost share for new enrollees under that arrangement, which guts one of the big aspects of Obamacare. Basically, it says that if the states want Obamacare, they're going to pay more for Obamacare. Why should the federal government have to subsidize all of that? Senate Majority Leader John Thune declined to comment on those concessions, but Johnson suggested that Thune and Trump would support the amendment, which had first been promoted by Florida Senator Rick Scott. So there are enough sort of giveaways to the fiscal hawk wing to get Ron Johnson on board. Senator Mike Lee of Utah also was part of the huddle, and he told reporters that part of the conversation focused on deficit reduction, Now, again, there could theoretically be a blow-up before this is all said and done, but President Trump personally intervened Friday and Saturday to shore up the whip count. He did aggressively lobby Tom Tillis on Friday night, and then he attacked him publicly, but he lobbied some of the other senators as well. Apparently, J.D. Vance interceded after the vote was called to win over Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski, and then he went to work on the other holdouts as well. Senator Josh Hawley also jumped on board. So, again, we'll see what the final result here is. However, it looks like the big, beautiful bill is moving toward passage. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, he said, listen, it's time to vote. Enough of this.
Look, I believe in teamwork. It gives you somebody to blame. But at some point, you've got to make a decision. Now, our quarterbacks are John Thune and Mike Crapo. They're both rock stars. They're trying to make everybody happy. It can't be done. We have cussed and discussed and rediscussed. We need to start voting. Everybody needs to adult real hard. And the jackassery has to stop. I have encouraged John and Mike to tell everyone, look, we're going to start voting tomorrow at noon. If you're not happy, offer an amendment. We'll have a full amendment process. But here's the bottom line. In any legislation of this magnitude, some people are just going to have to settle for a ham and egg sandwich without the ham. That's just the nature of the beast. And I think that if you put everybody to the test and say, look, this is why God made votes, it's time, vote, I think the bill will pass.
Yeah, Senator Kennedy is correct about that. As I said from the very outset with regard to the one big beautiful bill, the choices were this: high taxes and high spending, or less high taxes and slightly lower spending than that. Those were the choices. There was no bill here that was going to fix America's massive deficit problem or massive debt problem. There's not the support in the American body politic for that sort of thing. The real changes that need to be made are not going to be made around the edges. There's not even support to go back to 2019 levels of spending, which again would not fix our national debt. It would be a lot better, but it wasn't going to fix our national debt. Senator Katie Britt of Alabama also came out praising the big, beautiful bill. Here she was.
We have been working tirelessly. I think today we finished our 51st meeting on the big, beautiful bill, talking about different perspectives, trying to make sure that it's the very best product for the American people. We're going to ensure that we secure our border, that that's not just for now, but we're doing that for generations to come. We're going to make sure that the defense capabilities are of the utmost importance and that our warfighter is the best trained, equipped, and ready across the planet. I think we have seen over the last several weeks, and this week in particular, how important that is. We're going to unleash American energy, Kellyanne. We know it's important not only for our economy, but it's also important for national security. And then when you look at the tax breaks that we're going to have for everyday, hard-working Americans, President Trump has ensured, whether it's no tax on tips or no tax on overtime, that we are putting the American people first. We're giving them more of their hard-earned money right back in their pocket, and we're going to make significant strides.
Okay, so again, a lot of this is true, and some of the moderates in the House and in the Senate have come around. So, of course, have some of the fiscal hawks. Mike Lawler, who is a sort of holdout on the bill, given the fact that he's from New York, and a lot of the Congress people from New York who are Republican are worried about losing their districts if they do not get SALT deductions that are high enough. SALT, of course, are state and local tax deductions taken before the federal tax income is actually established. He came out in a Saturday interview and said he supported the latest version of the state and local tax deduction in the Senate's mega bill, praising it as a big win. He said in negotiation, you've got to know how to define a win and to take yes for an answer. The latest Senate bill raises the SALT deduction up to $40,000 through 2029. Now, again, these are policies I don't like. I don't like the state and local tax deduction. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's insane that the taxpayers of Florida who do not pay a state income tax are supposed to subsidize people who live in New York and California so that the state of New York or the state of California can continue to maintain these massively high taxes on their own citizens. With that said, when you make a big piece of legislation, it is a game of horse trading and swapping and all the rest. And it's actually gotten worse since the death of so-called earmarks. So earmarks were all those things everybody hated, where a senator would have a bridge named after him in a federal bill. And it was like, that's super corrupt. It's super terrible. Okay, but here's the problem. everybody in Congress has to show their district they brought home the bacon. So it either comes home in the form of a post office named after them, or it comes in the form of a gigantic provision that provides for state and local tax deduction. I'd much rather have the post office named for Mike Lawler in his local district than have this gigantic state and local tax deduction in the state of New York. But they got rid of earmarks, and thus you are stuck with actually bigger spending in many ways than you would have had if you just had the sort of Christmas tree where people put ornaments on the Christmas tree. And meanwhile, Josh Hawley, who was a holdout on the big, beautiful bill, he said on Saturday that he would back the signature legislation. He said, I'm going to vote yes on the bill. He said he was satisfied by a change that would help delay implementing changes to the provider tax language, which most states use to help cover Medicaid costs. He said he was also encouraged by an increase in the rural hospital fund, which means his state will get more Medicaid funding for the next 4 years. Again, much of the sort of solve here was bigger spending in certain areas. Now, the place that really did get slapped was green energy. And this led Elon Musk to come out and condemn the bill again. Quote, the latest Senate draft bill will destroy millions of jobs in America and cause immense strategic harm to our country. He called it utterly insane and destructive to give handouts to industries of the past while severely damaging industries of the future. Now, again, one of the problems for Elon and for many of the people in sort of the tech space in the bill is that the bill gets rid of a lot of tax subsidies for electric vehicles. It does provide certain tax subsidies for the coal industry. It also apparently provides a sort of excise tax on wind farms and solar cells past 2027. So the bill is, in fact, a slap against green energy. But here's the question. Can green energy actually live up to its promise? Or is it going to have to be subsidized by the American taxpayer forever? And what is the goal here? Bottom line is this for all of us. Again, the horse trading will continue. There will be many more changes before we reach the final version of this bill, because once it passes the Senate, the House has already passed its own version, then they have to go to reconciliation, and then they get it together, they negotiate. I'm sure they're going to be negotiating all through the night, many times this week, until this thing actually gets passed. But if the bill were not to pass, you would see the severe possibility of a true economic downturn. Because the reality is that there's some economic data suggesting that a downturn may be headed for us anyway. There's some weakening economic data, even despite the fact that the Dow Jones Industrial Average is hitting all-time highs right now, that it's recovering, according to the Wall Street Journal. Investors may not think the economy is taking off, but they're probably believe the worst-case scenarios feared in recent months have not yet come to pass. Trump's tariffs, deportations, and cuts to the federal bureaucracy have bent the economy, but they haven't broken it. The S&P 500 plummeted 19% from its previous high in February to its 2025 low on April 8th. Behind that drop, fears that Trump's threatened tariffs of as high as 145% on China and 50% on other major trading partners would send inflation and interest rates up, sap business and consumer confidence, and spark a recession. Instead, President Trump, of course, significantly dialed back a lot of those gigantic tariffs. In recent months, business confidence fell amid those tariff threats, but businesses kept investing in equipment, factories, and technology. Jason Furman, Harvard economics professor who advised Obama, said the macroeconomy is doing decently. He says the market is more confident that Trump will back off if necessary. Now, again, I've said this before, President Trump lives in the world of reality, and so the chances were pretty strong that he was going to eventually back off some of his tariff war as the effects started to be felt. And President Trump would love nothing better for the Federal Reserve to lower the interest rates. That's only going to happen if he backs off a lot of the tariff talk that he has been doing. The last thing President Trump wants or needs is an economic downturn. The big, beautiful bill will provide a sense of stasis and calm to the markets that has been lacking for the past several months. So that's a big victory for President Trump, a huge victory for Senate Majority Leader Thune. If the Republicans are able to cobble together a majority in the Senate where they have only 53 seats, and in a House where they have a majority by a couple of seats, that is indeed a piece of tremendous legislative legerdemain by both Speaker of the House Johnson and Senate Majority Leader Thune. President Trump gets another huge victory. Speaking of huge victories, on Friday, the Supreme Court of the United States issued 3 separate rulings, all of which benefit people who are conservative, one of which benefits the Trump administration in particular. The most hotly covered of these particular opinions is Trump versus Casa Inc. Okay, this is a case connected with the executive order that President Trump issued immediately upon entering office, suggesting that the executive branch should no longer recognize, quote-unquote, birthright citizenship for people who do not have at least one parent who's an American citizen. So the basic idea is that if you come across the border illegally with your spouse, and then you drop a baby in the United States, that baby should no longer be considered a citizen. Now, there are 2 real issues here. One is the meaning of birthright citizenship. And that is an interesting, fascinating argument about the meaning of the clause in the 14th Amendment, Clause 1, Section 201 of the Nationality Act of 1940, which suggests that you have to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof in order to be a citizen of the United States. So if you're a Mexican citizen and you are subject to the jurisdiction of Mexico, but you're here illegally and therefore not subject to the jurisdiction of American law in the same way as a citizen, really, you should not be treated as a citizen, and neither should the baby that you have in the United States. That's the case made by the Trump administration. On the other side of the ledger, people will argue that since essentially the beginning of the 20th century, birthright citizenship has been the predicate law for immigrants coming to the United States ever since a Supreme Court case called Guam Camara. But that particular matter was put to the side in this case. The real question is whether a district court judge can issue a nationwide injunction to stop the implementation of the executive order. So here the question is one that we've seen over and over and over again. That question is, can a district court judge say, based on a single case in California or New York or Hawaii, that all across the country, an executive order or a piece of legislation cannot go into effect based on a single district court judge somewhere out there? And the answer the court found is absolutely not. That's ridiculous. You cannot have individual district court judges moving beyond the scope of their authority in order to declare nationwide injunctions. But essentially, if you come to a district court judge and you say this law has violated my rights, the district court can put an injunction on the federal government with regard to you. You are the plaintiff. But it can't put an injunction on everyone across the entire land vis-a-vis this law. The opinion was delivered by Amy Coney Barrett. So first of all, I'd like to point out that all the people who were ripping on Leonard Leo of the Federalist Society. Full disclosure, I was a member of the Federalist Society when I was in law school because it was the conservative institution and is the conservative institution for law students and legal professionals. People who are ripping on Leonard Leo for suggesting Amy Coney Barrett for the Supreme Court of the United States, let me just point out that just because she doesn't vote the way you want on every single case does not make her David Souter. It does not make her Justice Breyer. She is a very textualist judge. So, she wrote the opinion of the court, and it is a very clear opinion. She says that the United States courts are not capable of simply issuing at the district court level nationwide injunction. Why? Well, because there is no actual predicate to this. Congress has never granted federal courts the authority to universally enjoin the enforcement of an executive or legislative policy. And she says, the government is likely to succeed on the merits of its argument regarding the scope of relief. A universal injunction can only be justified as an exercise of equitable authority, but Congress has never granted federal courts that sort of power. The Judiciary Act of 1789 endowed federal courts with jurisdiction over all suits in equity. And still today, the statute is what authorizes federal courts to issue equitable remedies. But that is not total equitable authority. So, in other words, they would have to have special delegated authority. Quote, neither the universal injunction nor any analogous form of relief was available in the High Court of Chancery in England at the time of the founding. Equity offered a mechanism for the Crown to secure justice where it would not be secured by ordinary and existing processes of law. But that never extended to the idea of gigantic nationwide injunctions, even going all the way back to the founding era. As Justice Barrett points out in a 6-3 majority for the court, that there is no long-standing record of universal nationwide injunctions being issued by courts. Quote, the universal injunction is conspicuously non-existent in most of our nation's history. Its absence from 18th and 19th century equity practice settles the question of judicial authority. That the absence continued into the 20th century renders any claim of historical pedigree still more implausible. Even during the deluge of constitutional litigation that occurred in the wake of Ex parte Young throughout the Lochner era at the dawn of the New Deal, universal injunctions were nowhere to be found. So, as Justice Barrett points out, there is no serious history of a nationwide injunction issued by a district court. You cannot just have one judge, Los Angeles, California, issue an injunction on all national law based on a singular case brought before the court. So, there is a rather hilarious portion of this opinion, and that is where Justice Barrett, as well as the rest of the court, absolutely rips into Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who has seized the high ground as the worst member of the court. So I thought it was Sonia Sotomayor by a long shot. Sonia Sotomayor is an awful justice, truly dumb. She writes horrible opinions. Elena Kagan, who's dean of the Harvard Law School, and I was there, is a smart person with whom I disagree. Justice Sotomayor has evidence zero smart. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson has evidence not only zero smarts, but zero actual principles. So, this opinion just rips apart Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's dissent, which, honestly, it sounds like it was written by a first-year law school student who is familiar with online memory, but not with law. The opinion says, Justice Jackson chooses a startling line of attack that is tethered neither to any sources, nor, frankly, any doctrine whatsoever. Waving away attention to the limits on judicial power as a mind-numbingly technical query, she offers a vision of the judicial role that would make even the most ardent defender of judicial supremacy blush. In her telling, the fundamental role of courts is to order everyone to follow the law full stop. And, she warns, if courts lack the power to require the executive to adhere to law universally, courts will leave a gash in the basic tenets of our founding charter that could turn out to be a mortal wound. Rhetoric aside, says the opinion, Justice Jackson's position is difficult to pin down. She might be arguing that universal injunctions are appropriate, even required, whenever the defendant is part of the executive branch. If so, her position goes far beyond the mainstream defense of universal injunctions. At best as we can tell, though, her argument is more extreme still, because its logic does not depend on the entry of a universal injunction. Justice Jackson appears to believe the reasoning behind any court order demands universal adherence, at least where the executive is concerned. In her law-declaring vision of the judicial function, a district court's opinion is not just persuasive, but has the legal force of a judgment. Once a single district court deems executive conduct unlawful, it has stated what the law requires, and the executive must conform to that view, ceasing its enforcement of the law against anyone, anywhere. We will not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument, says Justice Barrett, which is at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself. We observe only this. Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive while embracing an imperial judiciary. No one disputes the executive has a duty to follow the law, but the judiciary does not have unbridled authority to enforce this obligation. In fact, sometimes the law prohibits the judiciary from doing so. See Marbury versus Madison. What a slap that is, just for the lawyers in the crowd. Marbury versus Madison is like the #1 constitutional law case because it establishes the idea of Supreme Court judicial oversight of legislative action or executive action. Right? That is the idea of Marbury versus Madison, and established judicial review. But what it found was that James Madison, who was then president, had violated the law, but it also held that the court couldn't actually issue a writ of mandamus ordering him to follow it. So that is such a that's like you're a first-year law school student, and so you do not get to lecture us. If you don't know Marbury versus Madison, you just don't know what the hell you're talking about, is basically the idea here. What a brutal put down by the majority of the court against Justice Jackson. And again, her dissent is indeed quite astonishing. Not only is it laden with terrible arguments, but it is ridden with actual memes. I mean, she actually says at one point, as I understand the concern, in this clash over the respective powers of 2 coordinate branches of government, the majority sees a power grab, but not by a presumably lawless executive choosing to act in a manner that flouts the plain text of the Constitution. Instead, to the majority, the power-hungry actors are, wait for it, the district courts. Okay, like, can I just point out, putting wait for it in a Supreme Court opinion like that, between 2 ellipses, you're not writing for X.com. You're making a ridiculous argument, but you're arguing in the worst possible way also. So, a brutal face for Justice Jackson in that particular case. But what does that mean? Well, it means the President of the United States can now move forward with the implementation of his amendments bill. The whole country. This is how the appellate courts work. So in other words, this does not mean that President Trump can now simply expel all kids who are born of illegal immigrant parents. That's going to be appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court. It'll be ruled on in October, and the court will probably find, I would imagine, by maybe a vote to 7-2 or 6-3, that actually birthright citizenship is what the Constitution orders, or at least what precedent requires. It'd be kind of shocking if the Supreme Court found the other way, regardless of my feelings about the issue. And for the record, I think that actually birthright citizenship is not mandated by the Constitution. President Trump, for his part, put out a statement on Truth Social for a giant win in the U.S. Supreme Court. Even the birthright citizenship hoax has been indirectly hit hard. It had to do with the babies of slaves, same year, not the scamming of our immigration process. What he means by that is that birthright citizenship is not what is meant by the 14th Amendment when it says that people who are born or naturalized in the United States or subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. He means, correctly, that enslaved people are citizens. That's what the 14th Amendment was designed to do. Congratulations to Attorney General Pambani, Solicitor General John Sauer, and the entire DOJ. Speaking of which, here was President Trump listing off some of the policies he would now be pushing at a press conference on Friday.
Some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation. This was, in fact, it was the same date, the exact same date, the end of the Civil War. It was meant for the babies of slaves, and it's so clean and so obvious. But this lets us go there and finally win that case, because hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship, and it wasn't meant for that reason. It was meant for the babies of slaves. So thanks to this decision, we can now properly file to proceed with these numerous policies and those that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis, including birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee resettlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender surgeries, and numerous other priorities of the American people. We have so many of them.
So, again, President Trump triumphant about this Pambani, Attorney General. He points out that nationwide injunctions are basically coming from some of the most liberal courts in the country.
To put this in perspective, there are 94 federal judicial districts. 5 of those districts throughout this country held 35 of the nationwide injunctions. Think about that, 94 districts. And 35 out of the 40 opinions with nationwide injunctions came from 5 liberal districts in this country. No longer.
So, she is right about that. Chief Justice Roberts made a good point. So Chief Justice, again, I oppose his nomination. I don't think he's been an amazing justice. I think that he is more of a judicial pragmatist than he is a true textualist or originalist. But he makes the point that it's not your job to decide in advance what the outcome of the case is going to be. It's your job to actually look at the case and slap against the concrete around Jackson.
I don't start by saying if this comes out this way, this thing is going to happen, and that's a bad thing, as opposed to that. You start out with your rules about construction, about application of precedent, and all that. Now, if that leads you to a result that you look at and say, well, that can't be. That's pretty bad. You need to want to go back and look at your suppositions, but sometimes the result is certainly not maybe one you would have liked, and maybe it's one that seems pretty surprising, but you do have to keep in mind it's not your job to decide what the right result should look like. It's your job to do the legal analysis to the best you can. If it leads to some extraordinarily improbable result, then you want to go back and take a look at it. But I don't start from what the result looks like and go backwards.
So, that is the way that you're supposed to approach the law. That obviously is not true for many people from the left side of the bench. Scott Jennings over on CNN did a great job. He actually quoted Elena Kagan, who voted the other way on this particular case in 2022 on nationwide. Precisely the opposite, when it was a non-left-wing court holding up inaction Joe Biden.
I was trying to sort out my feelings on this matter, and I came up with a quote from a very smart lawyer, and I just want to quote because I think she was right when she said it. It just can't be right that one district judge can stop a nationwide policy in its tracks. Justice Elena Kagan in 2022 said that, of course, when we had a Democratic president. Now, she voted against the decision on Friday. This goes to show you that some of these folks really are hacks.
Now, again, he is totally right about this. Members of the media, they've been declaring that imperial presidency is the thing since Trump. Here's the reality. The power of the executive has expanded continuously for an extraordinary period of time in this country, particularly since the Obama era. Since the Obama era, when Barack Obama decided that he was going to use a pen and a phone, he said this: if I can't get things done through legislation, I will use my pen and my phone to do things. Since that happened, executive power has increased tremendously, all the way up to and including Joe Biden tried to use OSHA, he had to sue to stop it, OSHA, to cram down a vaccinated 80 million Americans. So don't lecture me now about how now we have all the same people who are complaining about Donald Trump now? We're very happy when Joe Biden is using executive authority to illegally alleviate student loans. Here's CNN's Gretchen Carlson, however, doing this routine.
The first thing that came to mind today to me was that we may now have a change. This is so different from how the separation of powers has worked in this nation for decades and decades. So, look, big picture, yes, huge win for Trump. But something I want to bring up tonight is that I believe this will change the way that politicking works in America. Because this won't just be for President Trump. And if a Democrat would become president in 3.5 years, they would be given this same power. So this will change the way in which we politic in America, I believe, unless Congress steps in and supersedes this.
Again, that's an insane statement. We don't have we have a king now. This is not the way politics. This is literally always how politics works. Do you think that there's any president in American history who would have sat by while a district court judge simply annulled presidential edicts across the entire land? You're out of your mind. That's not a real thing. Meanwhile, Jen Psaki says, well, the only reason the courts are even issuing these injunctions is because Trump is dictatorial. Or maybe the reason they're issuing these injunctions is because many of these judges in district courts in left-leaning areas are of the political left.
So the only institutional bulwark against Trump's autocratic impulses has been the third branch of government, the courts. And as Trump has pushed the limits of his power, the courts have had to check him over and over and over again, largely the lower courts, issuing nationwide injunctions to halt his executive orders as they decide what authority he actually has under the Constitution. In fact, Trump's actions have been so extreme, the courts have had to use that power to stop him more than any other president in modern history.
Unless it's to taunt you.
I'm sorry, just because the courts are doing it more to Trump does not mean that Trump is more dictatorial. I mean that the courts are trying to seize more power. MSNBC's Ellie Mistel, who for some reason is the legal analyst over there, he and Ali Velshi decided to talk about what if Trump wanted to murder you before it stopped.
Imagine Donald Trump wants to do something illegal to you, Ali Velshi. Imagine that he wants to murder you. Imagine that he and Stephen Miller release an entire policy explaining about how they can murder Canadian journalists who are working in America because they're taking the jobs from real American journalists, right? So he's going to murder you. So you, Ali Velshi, you go to court. You go to court in the Southern District of New York and you say, like, I don't think this murder thing is constitutional. It's clearly illegal. It's clearly constitutional. Donald Trump and Pam Bondi and Stephen Miller shouldn't be able to have a plan to murder me. And the court says, you're right, Ali Velshi. There's no way Donald Trump is allowed to murder you. We're going to have an injunction. We're going to stay the executive order saying that he's going to murder Canadian journalists. And so you're like, great, awesome. And you go home. And then Pat Kiernan shows up and he's like, what about me? I'm also a Canadian journalist. Ashley Mansfield shows up too. I'm also a Canadian. What about me? And the court, well, I can't help you because Ali Velshi is the one who sued. So Pat Kiernan, if you don't want to be murdered, you have to launch your entire own lawsuit in the Southern District of New York again to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't murder you.
If the president murdered the Supreme Court would immediately take that. Immediately is an acceleratory process. The Supreme Court can take up the case very quickly. It would be struck down. The Supreme Court. I love that they have to go to the worst that would happen here. President Trump might want to murder everyone, and so everyone will bring individual lawsuits. The Supreme Court would never take it up. What ridiculous, speculative nonsense. Because the actual reality is that the other way is that any district court anywhere in America can simply invalidate a presidential action for the entirety of America. Always. That is the case that Ellie Mistel and the rest of these folks are making. And it failed at the Supreme Court level. Okay, so that was case number one. Alrighty, meanwhile, case number two, the Supreme Court ruled in a case called Mahmoud versus Taylor that parents have the right under the First Amendment, freedom of religion, to opt their kids out from classes, particularly for youngsters, that involve indoctrination into LGBTQ plus minus divided by sign propaganda. The opinion here written by Justice Samuel Alito. Again, a 6-3 decision. And basically, what he finds here is that parents have shown they are entitled to a preliminary injunction. Again, there can be an injunction from the top level, from the Supreme Court. A government burdens the religious exercise of parents when it requires them to submit their children to instruction that poses a very real threat of undermining the religious beliefs and practices the parents wish to instill. And a government cannot condition the benefit of free public education on parents' acceptance of such instruction. So, this particular case, Montgomery County, small children were being referred to particular books and classes on transgenderism and same-sex marriage that were designed to indoctrinate in a set of values. And the opinion quotes from these books. There's one called Prince and Knight, which, quote, tells the story of a coming-of-age prince whose parents wish to match him with a kind and worthy bride. After meeting with many ladies, the prince tells his parents he is looking for something different in a partner by his side. And later, the prince falls into the embrace of a knight after the two finish battling a fearsome dragon, and then the entire kingdom applauds on the two men's wedding day. And then there's another book called Love, Violet, which is about a young girl named Violet who has a crush on her female classmate, Mira. And the girls end up together, of course. And then there's books on transgenderism and all the rest. And basically, the board contends that they must teach kids this stuff without telling parents and without giving parents an opt-out. That is the idea. The board provided teachers with a guidance document suggesting particular responses to inquiries by parents, according to the opinion. For example, if a parent were to ask whether the school was attempting to teach a child to reject the values taught at home, teachers were encouraged to respond that, quote, teaching about LGBTQ+ is not about making students think a certain way. It is to show that there is no one right or normal way to be. But that, of course, is a form of indoctrination.
Thank you.
Because, of course, the left believes that there is a right way to be, which is to be on the left wing. And religious parents believe there's a right way to be, and that is to be religious. You're going to have to pick a set of values. There is no apolitical when it comes to these sorts of questions. The board rescinded parental opt-outs. So more than 1,000 parents signed a petition asking the board to restore those opt-out rights. And the board was unmoved. Instead, they decided that they basically needed to indoctrinate the kids. And so the court found, no, this is a violation, clearly, of parental rights. Parents are not forced to turn their kids over to the state so that those kids can be indoctrinated in left-wing social policies. At its heart, says Samuel Alito, the Free Exercise Clause of the First Amendment protects the ability of those who hold religious beliefs of all kinds to live out their faiths in daily life through the performance of religious acts. And for many people of faith across the country, there are few religious acts more important than the religious education of their children. Of course, of course. In light of the record before us, says the court, we hold the board's introduction to the LGBTQ+ divided by sign inclusive storybooks, combined with its decision to withhold notice to parents and to forbid opt-outs, substantially interferes with the religious development of their children. That is, of course, exactly right. Naturally, Justice Sotomayor dissents, and she suggests that, well, this could mean that you can opt out your kid from teaching about evolution. Well, no, evolution is a scientific theory. It is not laden with values. If you were to suggest that evolution means that human beings are purely animals with no moral obligations, that would be religious indoctrination. Teaching kids the theory of evolution is a different thing. In the same way, if you were to teach public school kids that the law of the land is men can marry men and women can marry women, that would not actually be a violation of religious freedom. It would be a violation of religious freedom if you started talking about the morality of that particular type of relationship. Again, this is something that the court makes absolutely clear. Justice Sotomayor, of course, relies on the evolution canard in order to suggest that if you oppose same-sex marriage, then you're basically a new earther, and that everything, that you're basically a religious fundamentalist, which, of course, is not remotely the case. You can be anti-same-sex marriage just based on natural law teaching. Essentially, what the left opposes here, in the end, is parents having control of their own kids. As Matt Barnum writes over at the Wall Street Journal, the ruling says parents can generally opt out of instruction that contradicts a child's religious upbringing. It marks another step toward putting parents in charge of determining what their kids are exposed to in school. Eric Baxter, lawyer for the Beckett Fund, says public schools are not...
I'll see this here.
Backbone was originally found. If you're looking to get Diamond this year, then this is the right video for you. Today we're going to be covering process, mindset, gameplay, everything you need to know to streamline your journey to Diamond. Let's get into the details. We need to start by having an honest conversation about what our champion pool actually is. Let's cut the fun, right? Typically what I see is this what people are playing for fun versus what is actually getting them results in solid. It's okay to play a champion for fun, even if you're not good at it. But don't turn around to me and say, "Goes, I'm losing all these games. I'm not going anywhere. I'm struggling in solo queue. I hate this game." Blah blah blah.
Welcome to Summoner's Rift.
You can sit there and you can play your 33% win rate Yasuo in silver forward. You can do that, and if you want to do that, and that's what you find fun about the game. Great.
30 seconds of remaining score.
Say I'm struggling with the client, and you look at your OBQ and you see that you Do you want to get results? Right? Do you want to climb and get results and get into a high elo bracket, or do you want to sit around and have fun on this particular champion? Now, if you would rather play an elongated journey and you want to struggle in silver for maybe a whole other year learning a way more difficult champion, then that's okay as well. We just need to manage our expectations. But I just feel as though there's this dissonance or this awkward conversation that needs to be had where it's like, what are you playing for fun versus what are we playing for practicality? And the OPGGs don't lie, guys. If you just look at your win rates, I see all too often people that have like a 65 or 60% win rate on a champion and they're just not playing it. They just can't accept reality. They can't accept reality that the champion that they're having success with isn't the champion that they find the most fun. And again, it really ties into what are we looking for out of our league? What timeline are we talking about? When do you want to get the week that you're striving for? What is really important to you? Getting diamond this year, or two, or getting diamond in the next 2 years? You don't really care about that. You're happy for it to take another 2 years. This is all fine. There's no right or wrong answer. It's all about being honest with yourself. What do you actually have mastery on? This is another great question, you know, that people say, oh, what if the war is, and they go down the rabbit hole and they're questioning, why am I struggling so much? I'm like, well, mate, you only have about 45 games. You've got 300 on your Echo over here. Well, no shit, you're going to have a lot more success on your Echo. You have a lot more champion mastery. So even though these are very basic and obvious observations, you'd be surprised at how much kind of cognitive dissonance exists around this whole conversation because it's a highly emotional topic. You need to set aside time in your kind of journey to have this honest and tough conversation with yourself. And then lastly here, guys, hone in one champion at a time. You're not going to be able to learn at multiple champions at once, and you could. 98% of the league population, even the best players on the server, they're going to be known or getting the majority of their LP from 1 or 2 champions at a given time. Now, this doesn't mean you need to be an OTP or a true champion. What it does mean is that you need to be much better or have a lot more mastery than the rest of the champions in your pool. The majority of your LP is only ever going to come from 1 or 2 champions at any given time in your journey. So the mindset that you've got to have is, what do I want to be learning?
Oh, come on.
Be a better player. You kind of get better at champions, which inherently allows you to express yourself on the rift through the champion's lens.
An enemy has been slain.
Should have shielded.
An enemy has been slain.
Probably would have lived with that.
Champion mastery
She shouldn't have stayed on here.
go hand in hand. So for the sake of, people watching the video, 1 or 2 champions and get very, very good at 1 or 2 champions. And again, let me reiterate, you can have a champion with 3, the majority of your LP is not going to be coming from that 3rd champion. It's going to be coming from your 4 points. Repetitions. We need to get serious about the reps.
I'm not against it. I always against supports.
I'm not going to push you guys here. Ideally, you want to be aiming for somewhere between 15 to 21. If you can get a bracket of games, that's excellent. If you're getting anything more than 21, that's I would say 30 plus is probably a little bit overkill. But again, this is really tying into the conversation of managing expectations. If you're not getting at least 15 high-intensity games a week, then your journey is going to be considerably slower, and that's okay as well. Not everyone has the luxury of getting 15 high-intensity games a week. You have a job, you might have wife, husband, whatever. But again, it's all about managing those expectations. You might go really busy making same growth because you have the time to put in the limited growth because you just aren't able to put in the repetition. I'm surprised at how many people
Good gracious.
We must learn to root.
I just need a point in the right direction.
That doesn't affect you. I was guilty of this.
An ally has been slain.
This in the past, I would say, oh, fine, that doesn't affect me. Even if I see
An
something,
enemy has been slain.
It's whatever. I'm stoic. I'm mentally strong. I'm a mental man. That doesn't bother me. But in reality, it doesn't go subtle ways, and those subtle ways can have a massive kind of snowball effect in your games. So very practically, what I recommend is the moment you load into the game, go /mute all and then /mute all. They're the two commands that will mute the chat. You won't be able to see me, but you will be able to see me. The great thing about this is that because you're not creating the chat, you can still type in things like give drag, hover me topside, give down, whatever. But you can also, and then you can mute the situation. The moment someone's spam things, you can kind of mute as well. Pings are very important on it. So that's practically what I do to get this in the game. You can get to my gameplay. This is the first thing I do when I load
A summoner.
Is that all it takes is one lull state usage that you looked over, that you missed because you were thinking about, oh, like, screw that guy, I hate that guy, or you kind of got mentally jacked up. All it takes is one lull state usage to completely change the trajectory of the game. You don't ping your counterpart once, boom, that Fizz gets a roam off bot, gets a double kill, the game is completely different. You autopilot out of base once and you walk to a dragon that you shouldn't have when you should have given it, boom, the game is completely different. You come out of base, you forget about warding and leaning, you die to a game, boom, the game is completely different. And this is what people don't understand. All it takes is one mess up, one slip up, for the game to be in an alternate reality. This is why I'm so passionate about not seeing the crap and muting all. And just, look, you don't even have to believe this as a long-term solution. Just do it as a short-term solution to get yourself into a position where you're happy in your journey. Now, if you're really serious about trying to get Diamond, we actually offer coaching for all ranks and all roles inside of our WTL coaching platform. If you're interested, check out the link below. Use your emotions to guide your attention in the reviews. Whenever you feel anything remotely negative or uncomfortable, use that as a sign to streamline where you should be directing your attention in the review. So for me, very practically, I still do this to this very day. If I, maybe there's a moment in the game where I'm like, oh, I just didn't know what to do. Should I go top? Should I go bot? What should the lane assignment be? Should I be contesting this dragon? Or maybe I felt really anxious about a particular event, or I felt really overwhelmed about something, or I felt really pissed off about something. These are the key moments where I need to get into the details in the post game and figure out what the hell is going on. Now, this is where we also need to prioritize based off the intensity of the emotion felt. If I feel incredibly overwhelmed or incredibly confused, that's a red flag, but that's a portion of the game where I really, really need to investigate and get into the details. There's probably something massive missing in my gameplay or my understanding of the game. And this is a toolkit that anyone can use at any level. And obviously you'll get better at this over time as you become a little bit more self-aware of how you're feeling within a game. But again, this is a really great pragmatic tip and something that I use every day. Last advice quickly about reviews: stop your reviews at the 5-minute mark. Anything over the 5-minute mark in terms of like the timer, how long you've been in the review in post game, it's too much. You're overcomplicating it. Move on. Queue up for your next game. So for dodging, I recommend dodging autofill, full AP compositions, and obvious trolls. I truly believe dodging is necessary. Now, there are some people that don't dodge, and I get it. You know, if you want to do that, do it. Again, for the sake of this video, getting to diamond, streamlining your journey, this is what I would recommend, and this is what I do very practically. I'm not giving you any advice that I would engage in my own solo queue journey. Now, I don't recommend dodging secondary role. I do believe you need to be able to play your secondary role at least to a baseline level where you're not going to enter losing hand to a team. And sure, you can have your own dodging protocol, and if you have, certain other boxes that need to be ticked for you to dodge a game, that's okay. But again, above this, what I'm showing you right here is exactly what I do, and it seems to work very well for me. Full AD comps are not as bad if you do have a full AD composition, unless you're versing heavy tanks. So if I'm playing, let's say I'm playing Nefiri or something like Yone, and I see if I've got full AD in my comp, but I see no tanks on the enemy team and not many champions that can really stack armor, it's like, who cares? I'm gonna get some armor pen anyway. Now, the opposite for full AP compositions doesn't really exist because building magic penetration is a lot harder than it is building, a lot more awkward than it is building armor penetration. So again, if you're versing heavy tanks, you see a Malphite, Rammus, or something like that on the end of Jim or Mundo, your full AD composition, get the hell out of that game. Do not play that game. Highly, highly recommend dodging. This is my dodging protocol. Follow it. It will work for you. Now, when it comes to the meta, you need to baseline recognize the meta, but you don't really want to overdo it. And kind of what I mean by that is there is always going to be some bullshit overpowered pick on a given patch. That's just the reality. Whether it's W Max Vlad, whether it's Smolder mid, whether it was like Aurora upon release, you know, Riot's not perfect. And, you know, I myself, I've chatted to Fox and said, well, we don't really want a balanced game because a balanced game isn't fun. There was always going to be something that is objectively stronger than everything else in the game. Your job, in reference to, you know, I guess recognizing the meta, is finding that overpowered pick, that pick that is basically making your games feel like an absolute nuisance or an absolute nightmare, banning it and moving on. And there's no shame in that. You shouldn't feel shame in banning that overpowered champion, and you also shouldn't feel shame in not adapting to the meta. For me, just very practically playing to a relatively high level, I'm not saying I'm the best player in the world, but like a Grandmaster Plus level, I barely scrape through the patch notes. I'll look and be like, what's, you know, is anything massive, you know, going to change my gameplay? Yeah, maybe a few things here and there, but for the most part, all I really care about is finding what the most bullshit pick is, getting it out of the way, and focusing on my own.
Don't you want a better gaming PC that's built with the right hardware at a fair price? Build Redux has that. They're gamers who want the highest frame rate.
So a very exciting video today, guys. We're going to be reviewing Dopa's infamous Twisted Fate. Now, he's currently, at the time of this solo queue game, sitting in Grandmaster, doing a very good job, considering coming back from a massive hiatus due to military service. Now, the reason I chose this VOD is because it's a very tricky game, and it's a very realistic game to what you guys will experience. And there's a lot of small things that he does that I think separates him from the average solo queue player. And quite honestly, he's exceeding my expectations. I thought that it'd be a lot more rusty, but it looks like he's come back to the game very easily. And this is going to be a bit of a technical review. We're going to be really getting into the nitty gritty. So some of these concepts are great traders because then now we've incentivized to give yourself that durability so you don't just die. So this VOD encapsulates great matchup understanding, beautiful fundamentals, and very specific things done in the mid game that set him apart from other players. So this is a matchup where we want to be going for early resets. Now this trade here, even from the get-go, very intentional, leveraging his bone plating there, tries to proc the Electro on the back end. But the reason that's a great trade is because then now we've incentivized LeBlanc to use W on us outside the wave before the wave settles, so that now we can actually contest the first wave freely. And this allows us to also get access to the second wave a lot easier. So we gave LeBlanc a high value W on the first wave, it can do a relatively high level. I'm not saying I'm the best player in the world, Grandmaster Plus level. I barely scratch through the patch. I'll look and be like, what's, you know, is everything massive, you know, going to change my gameplay? Yeah, maybe a few things here and there, but for the most part, all I really care about is finding what the most crucial is, getting it out of the way, and focusing on my own journey, getting better at the game itself, and developing champion mastery. And 90% of patches that you guys will experience
30 seconds until minions spawn
on how you practically play out. That there was a significant mana change on the queue whereby you had to stop maybe queue tapping. Well then yes, that's a pretty significant adjustment, and you're gonna that's actually gonna change how you practically navigate your next solo queue game. But I would say that's the outlier. Most patches are not actually gonna change
Minions have spawned.
What you're doing in your next game. It's going to be the same matchup hypothesis. You're still going to be threatened to the same amount. You're still going to have to ward and lean and get good resets and play around neutral objectives and build a very similar items. It's going to be very, very, very similar. Wide quality of meta is what in this video we're talking about getting to diamond. If you're watching this video, you're an emerald, platinum, gold, whatever, don't put too much significance on the patches. Make note, but don't overemphasize. So moving on to gameplay advice, I want to start by talking about OTPs and high elo names of the champion. One of my most pragmatic pieces of advice is trade a little bit of like a class section in your browser, which basically follows streams or YouTube literally dedicate time each week or each fortnight to watching a few of their games. Now you may ask, practically, what does that mean? What does studying their games mean? What should I do? How could I watch their games and take that knowledge and implement it into my own gameplay? And the answer is get a building. Again, no bullshit. That is what I'm talking about. Whenever I'm playing a champion, I try to find people that are very good at the champion, and I look at their ability usage on a case-by-case basis. I remember back in the day, when I played Echo for the first time, I love him. I'm the best Echo champion players. I literally studied the ability that I felt I was uncomfortable with in my own games. That was my W usage. How the hell do I properly utilize this W? I started looking at not just makes sense. Same thing with my food game. I went through back in the day and I was remember. I'm like, okay, I don't even know how to use my skill and look at my Q and shit. I was mango fishing, and I was able to make these very cut observations of what they were doing, and then I can execute that on the next game. So get very ability specific, and what you'll find in most methods, if you can get good at like their key abilities, whether it's like Syndrite E, Aurora E, or whatever the hell it is, the ability that you like to hit centers of it. If you can get better at that ability, that's going to solve a lot of your problems. So this is something I still practically do today. You don't even need to understand why this is. Engaging. This might be controversial. I'm very passionate about this. Blindly confident. Literally feel it. What does it feel like if you use your ability? What does it feel like if I look at the patient with that? What does it feel like if I go in and I use my ability? And you'll start to do trading and it may make sense, it may not make sense in that moment, or in that 5-10 games. Later on in hindsight, you're like, okay, that makes sense. I can see, I know why now that was using the ability that way. You kind of click in the future. Never underestimate the power of just simply getting inspired. It feels like I've been many times in my journey, but I feel like how do I climb? Has been slain. I always feel incredibly refreshed and inspired when I watch these other amazing players. Because it's like, oh, yeah, wow, there is actually a different way to interpret things. There is a different way to describe playing faces. And just the feeling of possibility, just simply feeling inspired about the levels of champion mastery, is incredibly refreshing, mentally refreshing. So, I think it really helps sustain ability. And it's I'll show an example in a moment, but moving on here, follow up by utilizing YouTube or websites like mid.gg to break down the trades that others take. So for example, let's say I'm playing Oriana into Fizz, and maybe I'm looking at some of my trades, I'm trying to make calculations, but I might go on YouTube, type in Oriana versus Fizz, and just make some baseline observations. How are they using their abilities in this trade? What are they doing differently to it? What are the similarities and what are the differences? Even if the lane's playing out completely different, don't worry too much about the color, the macro, or the lane strategy. Just very simply, the trades and how the kits are interacting, if you can maybe make one or two baseline observations, that will go a very, very long way. Ask yourself, why does this one trade go well, even in your own lane? Why does this trade go well? But on the next trade, when I did that trade, I just walked up and what happened? Why did one trade go well? And why did one trade go so poor? What was the difference? War stories don't write so this is a little bit of a clip from a mid-lane academy client playoff whereby they're giving us so they go up and start to I believe on China. I think they get clipped by a Q here. And then they walk back up and miss cover, trying to get to the range and will take a really, really nasty trade. So if this were me and I'm trying to get better at my trading, I'll go to this moment and I'll try to break it down from their perspective. Well, what happened? Where did mitigated that in my Q, which was good. An enemy
been slain.
Back then, Dino was able to Eon to me with the W, passive auto, and this. Okay. What could I have done differently today? Okay, well, maybe what I could have done is actually kept my distance, let the wave come in, not allow Dino to get into deep range, wait for my Q to come back up, and then maybe if she tries
An enemy has been slain.
Maybe I could actually, somewhat even out the trade. Or maybe what I could have done is wait for the Q to dissipate, passive on me, and then maybe if I actually got even when that Q wasn't on me, then I could use my W to trade on the back.
Winners don't die.
The reason I can't W here is because the Dino will just be out. So I might take a look at this sometimes. It might take me a while to kind of connect what actually happened and why it happened the way it did. Sometimes it can be very, very obvious and you'll notice, and this is what you need to do differently and what you need to do next time. Other moments like I want to do like I'm
Shut down. I have the best game in the spirit realm.
Just to figure out maybe why the trade went the way it did and what you could have done. My biggest advice here, guys, is that you don't need to, it doesn't need to be perfect. Even if there were like 5 things that could have been done differently, you just walk away from one thing. Maybe let's say here, okay, one case over here, yeah, I could have actually waited for the passive to dissipate on the design. That's a great observation. When there's levels, you can just take one thing away from me, trying to understand how to think fundamentally right. One basic on the right track, and then over time this will get easier as you become more familiar with all of the wide variety of champions you develop them to understand. Now, one of the most important aspects of getting to Diamond is actually
an ally has been slain.
Now, the way we fundamentally get better at this is understanding
an enemy has been slain.
The root cause of why we die and why we follow our flash. And half the battle of improving upon this skill is actually understanding what the enemy champions do and why they did what they did. Let's go ahead and get into a deep example where we can break down this process of improving the predecessor. In this clip, from the same gold Victor player from before, we want to use the bot side jungle to help his cane. The new guy
an ally has been slain.
And then grab himself in one shot. So this is obvious. So, the question then,
an ally has been slain.
Like, how do I learn this system? How do I get the most bang for buck value out of review? So, first things first, what I ask myself is, okay, what fundamentally caught me off guard? What did I not anticipate? What did I not fundamentally understand about this champion such that I felt safe enough to do? Now, sometimes it's very, very obvious. I knew Dinah was there, I knew she could land all of it.
An enemy has been slain.
That much damage. I just don't know how much damage a level 6 Dinah does. And that's okay. Sometimes that is going to be the observation. You might find that it's like, maybe it's like, okay, I thought that I usually be very think that that right in. Maybe I thought that I could sneak through. Maybe I thought that I could W myself. Maybe I thought my W and stuff the Dinah. Whatever the observation is, it doesn't necessarily matter. The key here is A, being honest with yourself, B, getting specific, and C, trying to look at the game through their lens. If I was that Diana, you were that Diana, what would you do? Why would the Diana do this? What is it that I didn't see coming? Now, over time, what we're trying to really fundamentally do is merge our lens and our view of the game with this person's view of the game. Because this is the interesting thing about League, right? We're incentivized to learn the game and improve the game through the lens of the game. So,
an enemy has been slain.
You might have a history with, say, 20 different champions. That also means that there's a shit ton of champions that you've maybe never played before.
An enemy has been slain.
Such that there's a lot of gaps in knowledge. So over time, as you play a lot of games, our goal and our job is to try and expand our view of the game. Not only view the game through our lenses, but be able to empathize with, if I was them, why would I do this? The more we can anticipate what they're going to do and why they're doing what they're doing, the more developed the predecessor will become. And so, again, what I've noticed with a lot of clients in this scenario is that they feel kind of ashamed that they don't know how much damage China does. And I find myself falling out of my clients when I say, oh yeah, I knew I could die, but I just compromised. I'm like, this is where I flip the question. This is where this is a great way to kind of get to the score.
I just need a push in the right direction.
If you think this is a conversation, I actually changed the champion that was the one that they maybe not familiar with. I said, okay, well, if this was a champion that you know really, really well, let's say we knew that this was a kid close to 17, would you have still done it? Yeah, probably not. And then it's obviously the case that it wasn't even you didn't feel scared. Then the real question is, well, why didn't I feel threatened? And that's what we're here to find out. Again, it can be a simple observation, it might be a complex observation, it might be a small thing missing, it might be a big missing, a big thing missing. It doesn't matter. The key here is that we're honest with ourselves and we get into the detail. And then, great, we can walk away from this game knowing, holy shit, okay, yeah, Danny does a lot of damage with 6. I'm gonna wait for my power, I allow Danny to get a chance to run combos. I'm gonna get ran down.
An ally has been slain.
That's a great observation. We look at it now. Our threat assessment is slightly better for the next game we get. Again and again and again. One of the other gameplay skills we must develop is learning to let people know how you This is a very tough thing to swallow. The whole idea of this concept is like, alright, my lane opponent may roam. I can't really
has destroyed a turret. Turret plating will fall soon.
The fact that this concept exists really upsets me. Like, I feel as though guilty is not a this is just bullshit. You're not going to be able to fight. You're not going to be able to sometimes you do have to shoot that selfish part because you're really mentally do it. You must at least somewhat attempt to feel what it's like.
An enemy has been slain.
Even if you lose that game, it doesn't matter. You can just feel what it's
You have slain an enemy.
And the best way to improve it is very simple. Go to that moment.
Enemy double kill. An enemy has been slain.
Kind of left this side lane wave and this side lane bomb. Whatever that moment is, ask on me. I don't know. And so from a learning experience perspective, I really encourage people to get out of their comfort zone and kind of be that selfish player, even if...
Your turret has been destroyed.
Let's go ahead and take a look at an example. So we're looking at the same gold Victor player. Here, this Victor is slightly behind the tempo over this Diana. So as this clip plays out, you'll notice that Diana shoves in the cage and starts moving. Now the Caitlyn and the time are kind of running in, trying to kill the Zara or whatever, and we ping that the Diana is moving. Now we don't have flash, we don't have ultimate, and there's a wave about to hit. This is not our set up. We're following Diana on the map. This is like an absolute perfect play. What we should be doing instead as a victor, what Victor's actually is, or a mobile control mate is, staying mid, getting in the wave, pinging that Dinah has moved, and then denying farming to the plate. Now if Dinah goes to the play and gets the double kill, it is what it is. It's out of our control. Us moving here is no bearing whether or not Dinah's going to get that kill, because they were too far overextended. You need to make peace with the idea that you're not going to be able to save
an ally has been slain.
Your team are going to die to wounds. Shit's going to happen. Shit's going to happen. But we're kind of making peace with this idea and really hold yourself to a high standard, and whether you fail roams or dark trades or just find yourself aimlessly and getting too far.
An enemy has been slain. Your team has destroyed a turret.
Intent with what we plan on doing within the future. If you want to give that
ally has been slain.
Half the battle here is simply just making a decision. It really doesn't matter how good or bad your macro is, and this is a pretty tough skill that I've had to swallow as a coach. I've had to realize, yeah, I don't think we need to teach perfect macro. People's macro doesn't need to be perfect, but where it all starts, where a lot of the problems are actually going to be solved. So the process
Oh my goodness.
Classic Dragon coming up in support. I really want to fight three times in 2 seconds, 3 times in 40 seconds, 3 times in 20 seconds. Get my team excited about fighting that neutral.
Your turret has been destroyed.
That's okay. Keep back. I think we'll make it
enemy double kill.
Doesn't need to be a perfect match. To at least just play not violence and running around, and your first is to form some sort of structure. Now, what do you think you're going to do? Similar to what we covered in the previous slide, in reference to neutral, you can be completely wrong, you can be completely delusional, you could think your role as an Ari was to dive in this particular game, when in reality it was it doesn't really matter. You need to have some sort of a baseline because the reality is, right, as your game knowledge kind of naturally expands and you put yourself in a wide variety of scenarios alongside getting better relationships and checking mastery, your assessment of what your person is in the game will change over time. But if you're not playing with the game, you're not using your lenses, you're not even having a baseline hypothesis, you're not even thinking about what you're like,
Has been destroyed.
You just want to slowly chip away, at least have some sort of forward momentum, very similar to structure and consistency in your game over time. Now moving on to the mindset advice. One of my favorite concepts, something that I truly believe in to this day, is this idea that climbing league is this journey of solving 1,000 puzzles. And a puzzle, what I mean by a puzzle is that it's essentially a unique problem with a unique solution. It's like, it could be anything. Should you go to that? Or should I run bot? Or should I stand here? Should we be giving this dragon, or should we be individual unique puzzles with a unique solution? Now, you'll be faced with very simple puzzles where it's absolutely no-brainer. You see basic game knowledge, basic champion mastery to be able to solve that puzzle. Others are going to be a lot more complex. Over time, our goal is to get better at solving these puzzles and get more effective manner with less I didn't know that war.
An enemy has been slain.
Right? Sometimes it's going to be a very underwhelming, small little niche scenario, and that's okay as well. The mindset, though, that really, I guess, keeps me on track in my own league journey is that I'm just slowly chipping away at puzzle after puzzle after puzzle, and I don't know when
your turret has been destroyed.
I don't know. But I know I keep chipping away, I keep solving these puzzles, my game knowledge gets a bit better, my ability in-game to solve these puzzles and execute upon these puzzles gets better. I'm going to climb This is the mindset of solving 1,000 puzzles, and it will really help you develop a much healthier relationship with your league journey. Stop trying to analyze the rank system, guys. The system is the system. People spend so much mental energy, time, conversation, Discord, we've got the Discord group trying to analyze how much MMR should we get. Why is my LP so low? Why does this team get these players and I get these players? Why is
enemy has
why
been
my
slain.
blue side, red side?
Double kill.
Honestly, it just doesn't matter. Let the system do its thing. I've never seen right? And so, I guess to help put your mind at ease, play enough games, the rank system will work over a large sample. Let it be. Focus your attention on getting better at it.
Your team has destroyed a turret.
Getting better at it. So
your team has destroyed a turret.
What are you actively improving on? What are you trying to do better at the game? What are you doing to get better at the game? And your best block. Right? What are you working on?
Your team has destroyed a turret.
What are you trying to get better at? You don't even need to understand how the rank system works for you to thrive in it. Just play the game, have your process, you know, follow everything that's been in this video.
I just need a
Let go of whatever past rank you did. You know, like, you get so jacked up about, you know,
An ally has been slain.
I rank 2 seasons in a row. Whatever the hell. Your journey will be so much easier once you just accept it. The moment you accept it, the moment you actually make it, the less friction is present that is actually preventing you from playing your best. This is probably one of the most important pieces of advice I would give in the mindset section. Continue to focus on the LP. Spend thousands and thousands of hours just on focus on the LP.
I have the best game in the spirit realm.
As they were. What are we doing, guys? What are we actually doing? No one actually cares. Right? It's you guys who start and the people that do your gold, your silver, your silver. If you're plat, you're plat. It is what it is. There's always someone better than you, right? That is also something that you need to wrap your head around as well. You can't go around comparing yourself to other people because not only is everyone's league journey different, there is always someone better. That's life, right? There's always someone more fortunate, more money, better house, better car. It's a complete waste of time. And then lastly, yeah, league's not going anywhere. Relax. Take your time. If it takes you 3 years to get to diamond, it takes you 3 weeks to get to diamond, so be it. Just because one person gets there sooner than you, they're not better than you. Don't feel stressed.
Wait,
to get it in a
but
particular
sooner than you, I think they are. I think
if you only have 3 months to play, then you got to, you know, work 6 months. That's okay as well. It's going to be around for a very long time. I guarantee you that. So, enjoy the journey. Do what you can. Bottom line, solve those 1,000 puzzles. Let the system build. Remove yourself from the whole system. Way too many people get so check this out. That league is very good, easy, casual game. No, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes focus. Right? It does require a pretty significant time investment and sacrifice. And, you know, it's hard enough as it is, despite, you know, all these other people jabbing at you, laughing at you.
If it's worth shooting once, it's probably
saying
worth
that you should
shooting
give
a
up
lot.
on a champion. Just leave those people. They're not worth having in your life. Don't let people shit on you for trying. Right? That's pathetic. Right? And if you set your goals for fail above everyone else.
Time for some rearm and bridging more.
Don't be afraid to laugh at yourself when you misplay. I do that all the time. I'm like, I go blunder something, I'm like, I'll laugh it Self-worth as an individual isn't completely aligned with how you right, you have you as an individual, and then you have your gameplay.
An enemy has been slain.
You know, I think we get so caught up in like, oh my god, look at this rank, and if I make this mistake, everyone's gonna laugh at me, and I'm gonna look like an idiot. Well, it's like, guys, no one actually gives a shit. Laugh it off, have a bit of fun. And people think that you have to be serious. You know, I guess Mr. Macho or elitist mentality to get results. I'm like, no, you don't. I frequently not that I'm extended but I do think people get very jacked up and they get too serious. Mindset of just don't be afraid to admit when others outplayed you. This is probably one of my biggest insights positive reviews from this. Conflict with others. Someone outplays, let's say they do something that's unexpected and they dodge all my skills. But in the past, I would have been incredibly insecure and been, oh yeah, I just in reality, I love it. They do creative, like trading.
An ally has been slain.
And we did dragon. And I didn't see and it also doesn't make you feel shit about yourself because you're admitting that other people also can make good plays as well.
Your team has destroyed an inhibitor.
So this is one of my favorite things that we still to this day. Absolutely love it. Very good.
An enemy has been slain. Double kill.
All chipping away.
Triple kill.
And you're solving 1,000 puzzles, taking it day by day, taking it block by block. No stress. We're all just students of the game. And lastly, you can look yourself put it all out there. You've done what you can. What's in your control? What your current level of what else can you ask for? Here's what it is. So, that's
your team has destroyed a turret. Your team has destroyed a turret.
Move on. Hopefully there's something you can take away from this video. Good luck on your journey to Diamond. I'll see you for another video soon.
Actors, we can make you believe we know what we're doing, when in fact, we do not. Whoops, I have no idea what these buttons do.
I've never driven a stick in my life, but my heart is rolled yet!
Small business owner, because I have no idea what I'm doing. But GoDaddy Arrow does, using AI to build a logo, website, and social content.
Walton Goggins goggle glasses.
Because if your goggles ain't Goggins, they don't belong on your noggins. With GoDaddy Arrow, it's like you know what you're doing.
As of March 2025, I've now officially spent more than half of my time on this earth sucking at League of Legends. Like many of you watching this video, I've played thousands of solo queue games, season after season after season, only to end up in the exact same place I started in, gold. I've never been able to climb on my own, and now that I'm cursed with 26-year-old boomer hands, I fear as though my dream of being a high elo League of Legends player is behind me. That was until I discovered Metafy, the OnlyFans for sweaty Sigma gamers. It's a glorious internet marketplace where you can pay for some random dude on the internet to coach you in your favorite competitive video game, which totally doesn't sound like a massive scam. Now, as I was window shopping on Metafans, there was one coach in particular who had a special package that immediately caught my eye. For the low price of only $500, I could purchase his Get Me to Diamond bootcamp, where he would coach me to, you guessed it, quote, a minimum of diamond. Alrighty, here it is, guys. Get Me Diamond rank, $500 dues. Oh, which brings my total give him a good tip, which brings my total to $562 and, of course, 69 cents. This... This will either be the best or the worst financial decision I've ever made, and that includes buying the fucking Gacha Garen skin. This is for you guys. This is for you guys. Love you. It's done. I am now officially paying someone to coach me to diamond. Oh, I don't know how that feels. So, will this sketchy League of Legends coach magically make all my money disappear, or miraculously help me go from being hard stuck for a decade to hitting my dream rank of diamond? Well, I hired this $500 League of Legends coach to find out. I went into my first coaching session with I rocketed in rank. Things obviously hadn't gone smoothly over the past couple weeks, and we both agreed that changes had to be made. Instead of doing like the 3 camp into going somewhere or, you know, kind of running around the map trying to react to a lot of things, I just stuck with one game plan and really focused on my farming and my tempo. And that change is what caused me to climb. So almost like a 180 from what was originally being recommended for coaching. And so, you know, that was, you know, honestly like a little disappointing. I was very happy with how well he took my criticism, actually, and he was glad to see that I found a playstyle I was more comfortable with. You know, I'm taking it quite seriously.
Sure, maybe.
And
yeah, I understand. Maybe the play style I was trying to teach you, it doesn't suit you.
What was also really nice to see is he immediately made changes to his coaching style to better fit me and my new playstyle. First of all, no live game, which I was quite happy about, as they just weren't really working for me at this time. And second, while we were in the VOD review, instead of just telling me what to do, he gave me explanations as to why certain changes in my gameplay were important, as well as how to properly execute them. After the session was finished, he sent me a convenient list in Discord covering all the things we talked about that acted as my homework. I much preferred how this session went in comparison to my last few, and it reinstilled my confidence in my $500 coach because of how well he was able to adapt to my requests. As for my review of the coaching up to this point, I think it's pretty obvious that after these 6 sessions and 6 weeks of gameplay, I cannot recommend him yet. Yes, he has been exceptionally kind and accommodating, our first few sessions were amazing, but I just can't get past how frustrating those middle sessions were for me as a new jungler. We skipped over so many basic jungle fundamentals, like camp respawn timers, tempo, and decision making, that I just felt so lost when trying to solely replicate his style. And it really sucks that after paying $500, I had to go looking for all these basics myself. Honestly, after seeing how good these free videos are, it's hard for me to recommend any level of coaching if you're a new jungler like me, when you have such amazing content like this for free on YouTube. However, this recommendation could completely change. I've got a lot of sessions left in this Get Me to Diamond bootcamp, and my $500 coach may become a huge asset in my journey through high elo. So if you want to see the continuation of this experience, where I try to hit diamond in only 1 year as a jungler, or just enjoy watching me do this stupid shit so you don't have to do it yourself, then be sure to subscribe so you can see what happens next with me and my $500 coach. Hi everyone, thank you all so much for watching. Really quick here at the end, this video took me like 2 months to put together completely, so if you enjoyed it, like leaving a like, a little comment, subscribe, all that stuff to show your support and that you're enjoying this stuff, it would mean the world. These, like I said, these videos take a shit ton of time to put together and a lot of money, so they're a big passion project and I really, really want to keep doing them. So let me know down below what you thought, what you want to see differently, all that stuff. It's really, really important to me. So I'm about to play League of Legends solo queue for 24 hours straight. The date is January 7th, 2025, and there is just over 1 day left in the League of Legends season. I'm currently hard stuck in Gold 3 after nosediving my way out of Platinum 4, and I really want to climb my way back up before the season ends. Which is why I'm challenging myself to go all the way from Gold 3 to Plat 4 in just 24 hours.
The fastest way to read a human being is to keep one question in your head. It is.
Today I'm talking to Chase Hughes, a US government brainwashing and interrogation expert who spent 20 years in the military, trained intelligence agencies, later on became a neuroscientist, and is regarded as the #1 human behavior expert in the world.
There's a formula that I used to teach for actual brainwashing, and it works the same to brainwash ourselves out of a behavior.
In this episode, we dive into how to read anyone and uncover their true motivations, how to spot a lie and get them to reveal the truth, how your personality shows up in the shape of your face, a miracle compound that he takes to heal his brain, and how to brainwash yourself before the world does it for you. So put on your seatbelts, let's get into it. Being on the behavior panel, you've looked at countless cases where you analyze human beings, whether they're lying or not, whether they've abducted or killed their own children.
Yeah.
What's the most fascinating or chilling case that you remember that you analyzed?
Erin Caffey. And it was the true embodiment of what a psychopath is. And she had her parents murdered and her little brother, who was a child. And she convinced her boyfriend to do all this. And
the boyfriend was not a psychopath.
No, I think he was just super suggestible, and she knew how to pull those.
He was just really, really into her.
Yeah, and Dr. Phil interviewed her, and you could see those eyes, and I've studied psychopathy for a long time, but I never felt it until that video where you could just feel that that's not a human being, almost. Like, there's no human in there. That's a wild creature that that views a human being the same as throwing away a paper cup.
So you just see through the behavior of human beings, little signs in their behavior, in their facial expressions, in their tone, the words they use. Whether someone is a psychopath or whether someone's lying, whether someone's concealing information. What did you see in her that gave that away? What could we look for?
The horrifying truth is that you can't spot a psychopath until after they've done something like that. So you could have the 50 best behavior profilers in the world, the top 50, and 99% we would be inaccurate in predicting who is a psychopath and who's not. They're so hard to spot. I teach a course for women on how to spot narcissists on a first date. And that's a lot easier. Where if you ask them about an ex-relationship, everything is someone else's fault. They're always the victim. Narcissists never have friends that are local. They never have local people that are their friends. They're always out of town. My friends are in another city. So they have a hard time maintaining relationships. So you'll see a lot of that, and that's like the #1 trend. You'll see very similar things with psychopaths. And psychopaths are attracted to large cities. In my analysis, Dr. Robert Hare has done most of the research on psychopaths. In my analysis, I think that cities are not just attracting psychopaths, I think that cities are helping to manufacture them. In the book I have coming out, I have a chapter in there called Psychopath Factories, where I talk about the elements of a city and how it manufactures psychopathy.
There was a psychopathy before, or at least not to the same extent, and it breeds that, it increases that?
I think it does. Let's talk about one thing that'll make sense right away. You've heard of the bystander effect, right? So, for your listeners, what this means is if I'm in a big city like New York or something like that, and I get hurt and I'm laid on the ground and I'm wounded and I'm begging for help, the more people that are around me, the less likely I am to get help. People will take pictures, they'll take videos. They all assume that somebody else is going to call 911, but they'll stand there and watch. So if I took this behavior in isolation and I told you a story about a person watching another person get stabbed and they stand there and watch. They watch in interest. You would call that person a psychopath. When you get into a large city, that behavior is common. That is the bystander effect, is the behavior of psychopaths. So us not relying on reputation, and we're not in a tribe anymore. Our brains are not wired to handle millions of people. They're wired to handle a tribe of about 150. So when we get to a big city, we have no capacity for empathy for that many people. So it gets shut off. Our brains say, I can't do that, and empathy goes away. That's why we're in LA right now. We're driving around. We just got off the freeway. We've shared a car here together. People are bad drivers because there's no reputation. You're never going to see those people again. I don't have to rely on reputation. That means I don't care what other people think. So more psychopathy. I think psychopathy is a spectrum. And some people view it as a diagnosis of you have to fit this checklist of all these things to be a psychopath. You can get close, right? Which means that there's a line, there's some kind of a spectrum there.
All right,
Maybe the whole key on a kite string in a thunderstorm thing wasn't my best idea.
Wait. The sun. So why am I standing in the rain like a fool? Solar panels. Imagine that. No lightning required. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And in uncertain times, a wise man prepares for patriots. Hour without being struck by lightning. Washington and Jefferson will be so impressed. My 4 Patriots solar generator is even strong enough to run the ice box. Anybody want ice cream? Word spreads fast when you've got backup power. Extraordinary! Revolutionary! To celebrate July 4th, get the best-selling 4 Patriots generator with 2 free solar panels. A penny saved is a penny earned, but saving on power? That's just common sense. 4patriots.com. Happy 4th of July, everyone! God bless America! Get 2 free solar panels with our most powerful solar generator. 4patriots.com.
I just need a point in the right direction.
My name is Pauline, and we own Fast Fix Garage Door in McKinney. We like the quality of the products. They're always really nice looking for me. I like the look of them. The guys like how they present too. And also we got a good value for money on the price of this one.
What size is your usual order with us?
We have probably about 50 pairs that we usually order, get delivered on a pallet, which is super convenient too, because then we can just offload them into our shed, and that's really good. But like today, we got a smaller order, so we can.
What's the best thing you like about shopping with SG?
The customer service with the guy at the other end, Jason Slinger, he's really good. He gets my order together fast, emails me over, we check it out, and then the speed of the delivery is good too. So, yeah.
Anything you'd like to tell anyone who hasn't tried it?
Give them a call. Speak to somebody about it. They'll work things out for you. They're super convenient. Small orders, big orders, they'll take care of
it. An enemy has been slain.
So what is it that you saw in that
slain.
case that made it that specifically the most chilling, fascinating case for you?
The way that she recounted it was the same way that if I described picking up broccoli at a grocery store. This is how she described all of that and the horror that happened. She burned the house down afterwards, or her boyfriend did. But she made sure to rescue her dog, and she was holding this dog while her boyfriend did all this, and you could see zero emotion on her face, and you can see these little defense mechanisms. She's a teen, I think, at the time. These little defense mechanisms that she built throughout her life of looking innocent at Dr. Phil with these little innocent eyes, and knowing that her looking like an innocent little girl was a learned, deceptive, calculated behavior is horrifying to me.
Wow. So psychopaths, you can't spot them because they're so good at imitating certain behaviors?
Very good at it. But one of the best ways to start, and I'm never going to say, like, here's the list on how to do that, because if anyone tells you they're like, here's the way to spot a psychopath, they're full of it. But you can start spotting a psychopath by looking at a person's face and seeing if they mirror your expressions. If I'm saying something exciting and it's cool, see how your eyebrows just went up, right?
Yeah.
That's called an eyebrow flash reflex.
I'm not a psychopath. I swear.
As far as you know. If I'm saying something sad, like my aunt just got put in the hospital or something like that, and you see somebody's face kind of fall a little bit, you're seeing a mirrored emotion on other people's face. Sometimes psychopaths don't know how to react. So you'll either see a lack of affect where their face has no reaction to it, or you're going to see an inappropriate response. So they'll smile on accident because they're trying to fake an expression. And if I want to tell you, let me put you in the mind of a psychopath really quick. And this is a story from Dr. Hare. So I want you to imagine you live in a big city and you go down
Are more like guidelines.
and you say, you know, I'm going to go get some fried chicken. And I walk down and it's 2 blocks away. You walk into the fried chicken place and you're walking by a car accident. And a mom is bleeding out of her head. She's holding her infant that's dying in her arms. It would make anybody cry. You know, like it's horrifying. Just me even talking about the simulated situation has been making me emotional. But you walk by the situation and you stare at it for about a minute or 2 minutes, and you look at the people around, and in your head you're going, fried chicken. That's it. You go pick up your fried chicken, you go home, and you stare at your face in the mirror going like this, trying to mimic all the facial expressions that you just saw in the crowd that was observing this accident.
That is so freaky.
Yeah.
That is a movie scene you just described. If there's any directors out there who want to make a video about a movie about a psychopath, this is the scene that you start. That's what you need. Yeah. Wow. So, I'm not really afraid of psychopaths in my life. I've never encountered one.
Oh, yeah,
I probably have. What's the percentage?
I'm not sure what the percentage is,
but we've all encountered some. I've never been affected by them to the point where I feel like, oh, I need to learn about it. However, like anyone listening, I have intimate relationships, business partnerships, people I do business with, people I get close to, family members, right? What are some of the things that we can do to spot certain patterns in them that we should be aware of, or like how can we get a quick read on someone?
Not for psychopathy, right?
Or anything to realize whether they're trustworthy, whether they're telling the truth, whether they're authentic.
The fastest way to read a human being, number one way, is to keep one question in your head. It is, what does this person want me to feel about them, and what do they want me to notice?
Unless it's to taunt you.
Number one.
Here in California, we have lots of climate events. When you have solar and a power wall, I get to control all that. I like the independence. During the day, when the cost of energy is lower, the solar runs the house. When the cost of energy is higher, the power wall runs. It automatically moves.
The last bill was a minus 64.83. If you look at the credit for the years to date, $492.82. I feel great.
Maybe we should shoot faster.
There's so many reasons why good internet is important being a professional gamer. The first one I'd say is reliability, or just basically stability.
So what do they want me to notice about them?
I dare you
And
to dare.
that's going to show you the beginnings of understanding the mask that people wear. Because everyone wears some kind of a mask. And I'm not talking about the COVID mask, but I'm talking about like a persona that I put onto the world. And the way that I teach this to military and government is the mask is made up of the things that this person built to conceal shame.
Conceal and shame is what we put on when we feel like we're not enough.
Yeah, shame is, I shouldn't have done that. I'm a bad person for doing that. I need to hide it. And not agreeing with something in our past or something that we're ashamed of. And shame today is institutionalized. It's a public weapon to use shame. You can just log into Twitter and you'll see it in 30 seconds. You'll see how shame is being weaponized. So shame creates cognitive dissonance, which is a mental discomfort. Mental discomfort says, I don't want to be this uncomfortable in front of people. That creates a mask. So we wear these personas and these masks to cover up something. So if you see somebody, 90%, 99% of us have a mask. This is the population of Earth. How thin it is, how thick it is, that's what changes and what the mask is made of. So if I'm seeing somebody who's acting like he's posturing all the time, he's yelling, he's like just puffing his chest out, the mask is usually the opposite of what it's concealing. So I'm seeing a fearful little boy that's afraid of being hurt.
A chihuahua.
Yeah, I'm seeing a chihuahua that's barking, and if I bark enough, no one's gonna hurt me. And that's what I'm really seeing there. That's what a mask is.
And then I guess another factor is how
You don't hurt him if you don't hit him.
open or vulnerable are they with just revealing that they do wear a mask? Because I think some people are just like, yeah, I do wear a mask. Yeah, and this is my mask.
Yeah, and if somebody's willing to talk about it and be open about it, and the second thing that I'm looking for is somebody's level of self-control every time. So what does their mask look like? What do they want me to believe? So when I was raising my kids, they were 7, 8, 9 years old. We'd pull up to a stoplight and there'd be a car in front of us covered in bumper stickers. I would tell my son and my daughter, what do you think those bumper stickers are trying to say if they had a voice? And it would be like, I did Yosemite, and there's a marathon thing, and like I go fishing, and like all kinds of crazy stuff. And my daughter, her name's Charlotte, she would go, I'm adventurous. I said, all right, keep going, keep going. What does that mean to other people, though? It means that you can trust me. Okay, what else? It means I'm fun. Okay, what else? It means I'm a good friend. What else? I need friends. What does that mean? I'm lonely. And like you see so much going on, and that's just one data point. I'm not saying that that's what that means every time. But if you start going down this rabbit hole of understanding human behavior, the better you get at understanding humans, the more that you're going to see loneliness, shame, and suffering. It's every human being. So the way that I deal with loneliness, conceal shame, and kind of anesthetize myself from suffering or equals human behavior.
So some other common masks that you see, you have the puffing out the chest, you have the, oh look, I'm so fun,
I'm friendly and fun,
I'm a friend,
yeah.
Alone. What else is there?
There's a lot, and there's the, let's call it a porcupine. So the porcupine is anybody that gets close needs to be reminded that this is too close. I don't want anybody in my intimate space. So my mask is I need to keep people away. And it's different than the Chihuahua because I'll let people get close. I'm not barking all the time. They only get hurt when they get close to me. So that's another great mask. And I think there's different ways that we wear our masks. And another mask is let's call it a baby or a puppy. Like I deal with conflict by rolling over and looking innocent. I'm kind of using innocence as a way to do things. And if you want to understand human behavior, I'll give you this is the most perfect formula that you will ever get as far as I'm concerned. So this is my opinion. Here's the most perfect formula for human behavior that I think will ever explain a human being. I want to find out how this person reacts to conflict and how they make friends and how they socialize. Because every human being is a product of how, when they were 8 or 9 years old, how they earned friends, gained rewards, and kept themselves safe. So what did I do at 8 or 9 years old to be safe? All of those three. We have something called the childhood development triangle. Maybe you can throw it up on the screen. But what did I do to earn friends, earn rewards, and sometimes rewards of recognition? If you grew up in a really bad environment, sometimes rewards of water. And then the third is what did I do to feel safe? And those little behaviors that we memorize at 8 or 9 years old, without us ever knowing, we carry that into adulthood. I'm seeing childhood behaviors in every adult. And I'm seeing how they do it conflict. That's what worked at 8 or 9. And I just say 8 or 9 is a random number, but in the formative development of years.
It is.
Calling all inconsistent traders. If you've tried trading with alerts, AI algos, signals, and every
who do they want me to think? What do they want me to think about them? And then what was the second thing again?
They want me to notice.
They want me to notice.
Level of self-control.
Level of self-control. What does that mean?
So I will look at somebody and measure their level of discipline. and you need no training for this. So if you and I were seated in the middle of an airport together, and I said, show me somebody who has a lot of discipline in their life, you could see a high degree of self-control. You'd be able to spot somebody. Anybody listening right now will be able to spot somebody with discipline. And that's one of the first things I look at, somebody's degree of self-control. And I know that instantly, even if they're a stranger, they'll be more predictable in a good way. Like, they're more likely to be trustworthy because they already discipline themselves. They have self-control. So if I know that I'm getting into a business relationship or something with somebody that has self-control problems,
An enemy has been slain.
and you may see this, some people might think that that's somebody being overweight, and they might have some self-control issues. Then I'm just a little more cautious. It's not that I'm not going to do it. It's just I know to be a little cautious about any indicators of low self-control.
So you're looking for a business partner, somebody who's fit, looks healthy, takes care of themselves. I mean, it seems obvious, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's easy to overlook that. I guess it's the same thing with an intimate partner, right?
Yeah, and one of the fastest ways to estimate this for ourselves is one of the ways that I ask my clients on the survey. One of the questions on my client surveys is, what would a stranger rate my diet on a 1 to 10 scale? Just by looking at me from 10 yards away. How would a stranger rate what I eat every day? Is it good or bad? And that's a pretty good way to start that off. And just thinking about it in my own life, or your own life, is what kind of self-control am I projecting?
What's your read on my mask?
Your mask is, I need to be harmless. And so you have more of a puppy mask, and that's how you dealt with conflict, be it or not, is I'm going to be more and more innocent. And I'm going to use innocence to solve this problem. I'm going to stay out of conflict if I can kind of just be nice and kind. Let's just everybody become friends with each other really quick, as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that's very accurate. One of the things we talked about yesterday as well.
Dare you to dare.
How do I get out of that? Because I have a side of me that's, when that comes out, I do not want to get out of it.
Right, yeah.
And I'm afraid of that
An
thought.
ally has been slain.
But it comes out in moments where it's necessary. My first go-to is, how would you approach something like that? Somebody notices their mask, whatever it might be.
You need to get in touch with whatever the opposite of that mask is. So for yours, it can be becoming that armor. And I am not a violent person. Would you agree? Like, I'm a pretty chill dude.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm better at violence than probably most people that you know. So I'm excellent at violence. That does not make me harmless. It makes me do no harm. So I think that once you get familiar and intimately familiar with whatever the opposite of the mask that we wear is, we get to a point where we no longer need the mask to cover things up.
It's so fascinating because as you're talking about this, I feel like with certain people, I am humble, gentle.
Yeah.
Whereas I think there's a bunch of people, and I told you this before in the previous episode, there's a lot of people who found me intimidating. And when I'm around them, you can just sense that. And I'm finding myself being gentle on purpose to make them comfortable.
Yeah.
So I guess we can have multiple masks depending on who we're interacting with, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that's the same mask though.
Okay.
I need to become softer so that they can get softer. I soften to solve problems. And that's kind of what that is. Like, I'm gonna get softer. For somebody that wears that mask on a regular basis, they're gonna say, well, yeah, that's how we solve problems. Like, I'm not gonna be a dick. Because they see me not wearing this mask means that I'm the opposite of this. Not a spectrum. They view like, if I don't do this, it's the opposite. I have to be a dick. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But there's a way to deal with conflict in a very direct way and very confident dealing with it. it's not a day. You know what I mean? So
it sounds like if you're a Chihuahua who's barking a lot and puffing your chest,
yeah,
you're actually a pussy.
If you're a puppy until I was 24, I was a Chihuahua.
Okay, and if you're a puppy who's like, oh, look how nice I am, then you're actually a dick.
Yeah.
It's just okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I have that side of me where I'm like very impatient. I can be very impatient with people, and I hit the brakes. I'm like, fine, kindness, you know.
Yeah.
But I have that like.
What's up, guys? Today I'm installing the gun system for F-150. Well, now that I didn't properly read the instructions, I gotta rip this back out. All I gotta say. Read the instructions.
Are you looking to establish your business using an address other than your home? Wish you had a professional business address and phone number instead of your home address and personal number? Wouldn't it be great if you could read and manage your business mail from anywhere? iPostal One can help. With an iPostal One virtual business address, it's easy to stay connected, protect your privacy, and enhance your business image. You'll be able to receive mail and packages from any carrier and register your business using your new business address. View and manage your mail the day we receive it using our app or website. You can even pick it up. So how does it work? Simply choose a business address at any of the thousands of office buildings, workspaces, or shipping stores in our international network. If you want a phone and fax number that's just for your business, we can do that too. Then you can update all your business contact details with a professional address and phone number. When your mail arrives, we'll take a picture of the envelope or package, upload it to your account, and send you a notification when it's ready to read. From there, you just log into your account and tell us what you want to do with these items. Forward, scan, schedule a pickup, discard, or shred it, and we'll do the rest. With thousands of great reviews, our customers love our service. Stay connected to your business 24/7 with an iPostal One virtual business address. Sign up today at iPostal1.com.
So, and I guess embracing that, making peace with that dark side.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, Carl Jung spent his whole life talking about these things, like getting familiar with our shadow. And I think if we do that and we know ourselves, I think that's the biggest problem for most people, is that we don't fully know ourselves. And I think I was like 26 before I realized who the hell I was. And it took maybe another 10 years before I started really getting it. My wife knew herself in like middle school, like 10 times more mature than I am. And I think that's the biggest problem for most people, is that they don't know who they really are. And that means that someone else will be able to tell you. And other people will be able to influence that. I'm not absolutely certain of what I am, and somebody else can tell me what I am. So, like, if you're certain that you drive a Chevy truck, and you come over and say, "Oh, that's a Honda Accord," that's hilarious to me, because I know it, and we know other things in our life better than we know who we truly are as a human being. And I mean, like, the faults, the insecurities. Can I be okay with just knowing that about myself and then just live? And maybe that's just getting out of the simulating life and just living it real.
Yeah. And I guess people can actually see behind the masks very clearly.
Those are more like guidelines,
Some.
really.
Yeah, I guess so. Because I feel like even when I'm playing nice, people can still feel the undercurrent of he's doing this because he's actually impatient.
Yeah.
And he's like, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
And he's actually intense.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, why do people think I'm intense? I'm trying so hard. But, you know? And the same thing is with a guy who's beating his chest and everyone's like, damn, that guy's really insane. Like, we all know it.
Everybody knows it.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I want to make this relevant for everyone listening instead of just making it about my
Everything's got to be about you. That's what you're doing right now.
I love it.
Let's do it.
That's part of my mask again, right? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, let's put the focus. I love putting the focus on other people as well. That's what I noticed in the conversations as well. Like if somebody asks me a question about myself, let's bring it right back to them.
You did that to me last week.
Yes?
No, 2 or 3 times. Yeah.
Yeah. I do that all the time. I think it's a protective mechanism. Like I don't want you to look into me as much. I want to figure out your stuff. And then I'm in control. And I've seen that so many times in this program that I did recently. It's like an emotional intelligence type of thing. You work with a bunch of people. So it sounds like for people listening, if they can figure out, okay, what's my mask? Is it a puppy? Is it beating my chest? Is it the porcupine? Get away from me! Don't mess with me! Whichever other ones there are that I think people can figure it out.
You can throw the chart on the screen if you
I'll
want.
throw the chart on the screen. I guess the way to get out of that is to the opposite, embrace the opposite, which is if you're a porcupine, for example, I know I don't know deep down.
I can tell that foot suffers from plantar fascia. Your team has their fashion design comes from you. Wince when you walk. And do they work? Shut down.
What's your worst assignment horror story?
I had a 10-page paper, and that didn't turn out too well. Just last night, actually, I had to do 20.
Actually, right. And they want other people to think. They want everyone to think that they don't care.
Yeah.
What they think, which is like
goes back to question number 1: is what do they want me to feel, or what do they want me? How do they want me to interpret their behavior?
The way they want me to interpret them is they don't need me.
Yeah.
They're independent. And
powerful and strong and don't need a lot of people in their life.
Yes. And those people I know deep down care the most. And it's the most beautiful part about themselves.
Yeah.
And they really care what other people think. And sometimes we have a specific friend of mine where it shows up. And yeah, I think what's behind that is trust issues. And I actually really care about what people think. I want you to love me.
Yeah.
But I'm trying so hard to be independent, and so
right.
I guess it is about what is my mask? What's the opposite of that? What's the emotion that I don't want to feel, or that I don't want other people to perceive about me?
What would I be embarrassed if someone revealed at a party? What would embarrass me most? And that's what's under your mask. So, and that's the shame that's hiding, right? So if I was in the middle of a party and somebody threw something up on TV, that would be what it is. And I don't want anybody to think that once you find your mask, that it's some kind of exit door. There's no exit. Like, we're programmed to do this. We're programmed to wear masks as human beings.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the 4 things you talked about in one of your books, the 6-Minute X-Ray. 4 truths about human beings. And 2 of them were, we all wear a mask and we all pretend to not wear one.
Yeah.
And so it's so true.
And the 4th law is
Mm-hmm.
everyone is a product of childhood suffering and childhood reward.
Which just children.
Yeah.
What did we need to think?
Yeah.
And it was fascinating to witness because we were all sitting there, he's FaceTiming her, and you were like, you pull up close to this screen, and you're like, she's hiding something.
Yeah.
She's not telling the truth.
Instantly.
And it was so incredible to witness and so exciting. I wish I would have filmed the whole thing, but of course there was, privacy needed.
Yeah.
But what are the things that you saw in that girl, and what went down where you're like, okay, something's up here?
So Leon's
Blink
not
rate?
saying the word woman because she is young enough to use the word girl.
Yeah. I know some people find it offensive.
Yeah.
Woman, whatever. Yeah.
He asked her, did anything happen last night over FaceTime? So my face is like this far from the iPad off camera though. Like I'm not in the scene.
Imagine this, like you're just sitting right
Just
next to
hovering over the lens.
Who's this guy?
So he asked her this question, and right away there was an increase in blink rate. There was pupil dilation, and there was sclera exposure. The white of the eye got exposed above up here.
Meaning the eyes widened.
The eyes widened like this.
It's probably a sign of danger, something bad is happening. I need to really pay attention right now and not say anything wrong.
Yep.
Be careful. So
Next.
the pupil dilation is the black of the eyes gets wider.
Yes, the black part of the center of the eye widens.
And you could tell that even through a FaceTime.
On a FaceTime video. Yeah.
Wow.
Next, the lips drew horizontally backwards, and this is a fear response. You can see it in all of these facial expressions you can see in a 3-month-old baby or a newborn. They're still there. Like if you have a newborn baby and like you let it think that the baby's falling, like you lower it really quickly, you'll see that movement. So the next movement is this little muscle jumps out in front of the carotid artery to protect your arteries. It's the sternocleidomastoid muscle. And we saw all of that. So we saw increased blink rate, pupil dilation, scleral exposure with the eyes widening, mouth going.
Introducing the new Transformer Table Outdoor Collection. Maximize your space with a table that extends to 10 feet.
What happened yesterday with FaceTime?
Yes, but let's not say any names. But...
Okay, we won't say any names. I was going to do that too.
Okay.
So, there's a friend of yours that we spent some time with yesterday.
Yeah.
And he called up a girl that he's been seeing.
Yeah.
And you told him, hey, do this, and then let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And he basically tried to figure out if this girl has been with someone the previous day because she went out with some friends.
Or if she was being deceptive.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what
Or she was concealing something.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating to witness because we were all sitting there, he's FaceTiming her, and you were like, you pull up close to this screen, and you're like, she's hiding something. She's hiding something.
Yeah.
She's not telling the truth.
Instantly.
And it was so incredible to witness. And so,
or a newborn. They're still there.
We saw this interaction, him talking to her.
And then I give him a 2-minute, maybe a 75-second long course in interrogation. I say, you say this, 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 and this. And he did that, and the truth came out. There was something being concealed, for sure. And you were there watching.
Yeah. So what would you do if you wanted someone to reveal information? Once you see they're concealing something, what is something, the information out? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
How
And
would you go about that?
this is where elicitation, those techniques of using statements, is not enough. So at this point in interrogation, what we call this a confrontation. So now it's time to actually have a confrontation, and it doesn't have to. You don't have to be an asshole, but you need to say something that says, something's not was off about that. And in the interrogation room, I might say something like, Leon, I know you're a good person. I've been doing this a long time. And if there's one thing I know for sure, it's when I'm not getting the full story. And you can feel the stress, right? I can see the stress on your face just from doing this. And it's very kind, but it produces some stress. I've been doing this a long time. Or if I'm just talking to a person I know, I'd say, Leon, I like you as a person. I've known you a long time. And if there's one thing I know, it's when I'm not really getting the full story here.
Doesn't accuse them,
Yep.
It creates a safe space.
Safe space. And then we move into something called a monologue. And this is where we have 4 goals: socialize, rationalize, minimize, and project. Socialize, people are going to understand. Minimize, not a big deal. Rationalize, anybody would have done that. It makes perfect sense. And then project, it's not your fault.
This is just creating a bedrock foundation of
safety.
Whatever you're sharing with me, it's safe.
Yeah,
And there's not going to be consequences.
In The Art of War, Sun Tzu has a quote that I think is so perfect to describe this, and it's, build your opponent a golden bridge upon which they can retreat. And that's what that is. So, socialize, minimize, rationalize, project. Those in real language. Let's say I'm really trying to get a confession out of a person. Let's say it's a person who stole a bunch of money from a business or a bank. I was going to do like a predator type person, but I don't think the transcript of this video would probably get it blocked or something, or depopularized or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
So let's do the money guy. So we want to socialize, right, first. And I would say, John, this makes sense. And I think once people understand the kind of person you are and the reason that you did this, I think everybody who understands this is going to fully agree and understand why you did this. Minimize. And we're not talking about $1 million. I deal with those people all the time. I talk to bad people every day of my life, and I know you're not one of those people. This is a small, tiny amount of money. It's not a big deal. What happened was not a big deal, and people get over this. People get through this. It's not huge.
I feel the golden bridge being built. I can slowly take my first few steps.
Yeah. What's the next step? Rationalize.
Rationalize.
And John, I know that your aunt has had piling up medical bills. She's been suffering. She's going through chemotherapy and all that stuff. Anybody in their right mind, this makes perfect sense why you could do this.
Easy peasy.
And now we're moving to project. And this company doesn't pay you shit. They don't pay any of their employees anything. And your medical bills are piling up as well because you don't have good medical insurance. I think anybody in your situation, especially with the way this company treats you, and they don't check for any security. They don't. If they wanted to keep that money secure, they would have locked it up. They don't. Anybody would have done this in this situation, and it makes perfect sense. So what I'd like to put in my report here is that you did this for good reasons. So what I want to know is, did you take that $10,000 to go spend on cocaine and heroin, or were you trying to help someone?
I didn't do it.
Right. Oh, hopefully.
So here's the thing, right? If somebody's innocent, they would still be like, yeah, well, that's all good for that person, but I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the first response that you get from someone who's innocent. It's like, well, you don't need to give me this monologue.
Yeah. You get angry.
Yeah, it's like,
innocent
what?
people get angry. Guilty people try to build rapport.
Yes. They take the first step on the golden bridge and they're like, is this safe? Is this...
Yeah, let me make you into a friend. I need to make you a friend. And innocent people don't care how you view them. They're saying, this is insane. I do not belong here. And there's a few questions before we get to that part of an interrogation. There's a couple of questions that we use to get a good read on whether or not I'm dealing with the right person. And the first one is called a bait question, or you can call it a mind virus. So let's say you're OJ. All right.
I'm done spending an obscene amount of money on takeout every done.
I'm getting back on track with very fresh, never frozen meals prepared by chefs.
This saves us so much time when we're chasing around our process.
I can get all the nutrition I need without having to obsess over it. I never run out of tasty, nutritious dinners thanks to Factor.
Factor has over 40 different dinner options.
Like protein plus and calorie smart.
I never thought eating clean could be this easy and taste this good.
I can't believe it has taken me this long to get started.
An ally has been slain.
Adobe Express allows me to get creative anytime, anywhere. Hello, my name is Raul Rodriguez, and I'm a content creator. I'm based in Honolulu, Hawaii. Being here fuels my creativity in many ways. My design style is both surreal and over the top. I love transforming regular day scenes into whimsical ones. I've been asked to help market a new volleyball league, so I want to create some eye-catching social content. I start by opening Adobe Express on my phone to create a post based on this photo. Now I want to add an action shot in the lead. If you click on it and you just click remove background, just like that, it's gone. Now let's amp it up with some Gen AI. I want to add a lush green island. We just draw the shape and you click insert. That's so cool. I'll also add some Hawaii mountains and adjust the colors. Looking good. Let me just add in some elements from our brand library. Now I'm going to add some animation by just clicking on this button. I like rice for the waves. So now we have a post that looks just like this. I want to share it via content scheduler. All I have to do is click the paper airplane icon and get to pick a time and date. I didn't even need to leave Adobe Express to get all that done. With Express, everyone can create effortlessly.
If it's worth shooting once, it's probably worth shooting lots. An enemy has been slain.
You were O.J. Simpson, you were at you did whatever last night, you come to the interrogation room, and I say, hey, O.J., I appreciate you coming in. We've got officers out there canvassing the streets, and we've got tons of people doing lots of research. I just want, and I like you a lot as a person, and I just want to say, I want you to think carefully before you answer this. Is there any reason somebody would have said that they saw you at Nicole's last night? You were there. You're freaking out. And I didn't say I have a video. I'm not lying and saying that I have any of this evidence, but I am saying, is there any reason that this would have happened?
And well, that you would know, because you may have inside information, right?
Right. And I did this recently with a massage therapist who was accused of sexually touching people while giving them massages and doing weird stuff. And we lined him up to this, and I finally went in and said, is there any reason that a video would surface now, that maybe a cell phone or something like that shows some of the stuff happening? And it was instantly, you could see sweat. This is on the Dr. Phil show, live on TV. And you could see sweat, and we didn't want to get to full confession mode there, so it was working. The next question to figure out whether I need to do the confrontation and Golden Bridge is, now let's put you back in the mindset of a perpetrator again, or somebody who did something. OJ. And OJ, I'm curious, what do you think should happen to the person that did this? What do you think should happen to the person that did this? And that helps me to kind of differentiate innocent and guilty people, especially if a child was harmed. And you'll hear this a lot in people who hurt kids. I'll just say that so that people know what I'm talking about. And I'll say, what do you think should happen to the person that did this? And they'll say, definitely an apology to the family. Definitely an apology to the family, but this person probably needs some kind of help or counseling, something like that. They need some kind of help, but they should definitely apologize. This is not okay, and they really need to see some therapy and fix themselves.
You are not bad at content. You are just doing it without help. I used to wake up stressed about content. What do I post today? Is this on brand? Why is engagement flat again? Then I met Suki. She's my AI marketing associate and my therapist. Suki doesn't just post for me. She plans campaigns, tracks trends, and knows exactly what will hit. She studies my marketing, writes in my voice, schedules everything. She's my social even when I'm off of it. Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, doesn't matter. Suki's pushing, building momentum, and amplifying my brand 24/7. She's not a VA. She's not some janky content. She's a full-on marketing machine, custom built to grow your audience without draining your soul. You want to look consistent, relevant, and sharp online? You don't need more willpower. You need Suki. Click the link. Hire your AI marketing associate. Let her run the brand. You run the business. Hire Suki and other AI employees from Motion by clicking below.
Orders are more like guidelines, really.
Battery's dead.
Tesla Powerwall is the only system that I could buy that would back up my whole house.
We've had outages during snowstorms. We had one hurricane went through and the power line went down.
Drag the generator outside. Half the time it's raining or a flashlight, so you gotta navigate it through the dark, get it plugged in, and crank it up.
I like to get Sunday morning on the deck here and listen to the water. Every Sunday at 10:15, his diesel mammoth generator trips over and goes for 15 minutes, just blares and
There's no noise from the power wall, not even a buzz.
So right now, as we're speaking, we lost power. And if you notice, there's a glitch.
The clock doesn't even reset from the appliances. You don't even know it's happened until you get the notification that you're running off the power wall.
To get the power walls was more cost effective versus getting the generator system.
Who would say that? Who would say this in the world about a person who hurt children?
And wants to minimize what they did and wants to get off the leash as much as possible.
Yeah.
Wow. The reason why it's so powerful, the question of, is there any reason to believe that I may have hurt something? It gives you the chance to at least be honest and be like, yes, I did it. Or yes, I wasn't fully honest with you. Because if you find out later that they lied, it's much more severe than, okay, they admitted it.
And those are the worst people to do interrogations on, because you've got to say things like, she was old enough to know what she was doing. Her mom didn't raise her well. I'm willing to bet this was her idea. She probably talked to me into doing this.
Projected on the victim.
Yeah.
And you have to, yeah, kind of put yourself in that mindset.
I'm getting nauseous thinking about it, but that's the way to get those people to confess. To get anybody to confess to anything, it's a pretty similar formula for everything.
Mm-hmm. And the powerful thing about the mind virus is it creates a lot of stress in them. When you ask me, is there any reason that I would have a video or heard something that would prove this?
Yeah.
It creates a ton of stress in them if they're guilty or they're concealing something.
And zero stress.
If they're innocent, they're like, hey, go ahead. Yeah. Personally, I would probably be worried that this is an AI generated video or something. That's actually one of my fears, is being wrongfully accused of something. And then going to jail for that, so I guess it could still create stress.
But it's a different kind.
It's a different kind.
A different flavor.
Yeah.
I just finished building an entire protocol for Chris Hansen, the guy who catches predators on TV. So Chris and I are friends now. And I built this like 9-page protocol of these perfect scripted one-liners that would make these guys start to confess on camera. So the upcoming episodes, I'm so excited about.
Wow. You can see, that's my line.
Yeah.
He did it. Nice. So those are things that people can use. One of the things you mentioned yesterday casually is you're talking with your friend about, oh yeah, you randomly mentioned my name and you said something like, oh yeah, Leon's pretty open-minded. You can see it by his eyes, they're pretty lower eyelids. And I was like, what do you mean?
Got safety protocols? Grainger has the safety pros to call. Shop our vast inventory of safety products at Grainger.com. Call, click, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
An ally has been slain. You have slain an enemy.
When in fact,
an ally has been slain.
I have no idea what these buttons do.
I've never driven a stick in my life, but my heart is full yet!
But GoDaddy Arrow does, using AI to build a logo, website, and social content.
For Walton Goggins goggle glasses, because if your goggles ain't Goggins,
They don't belong on your noggin. With GoDaddy Arrow, it's like you know what you're doing.
If it's worth shooting once, it's probably worth shooting a lot.
oh, you have lower eyelids, which is a sign that I'm less likely to make this facial expression, where you pull your eyelids in. Skepticism. And
both of us have the same lower eyelids. Let's both look into our individual cameras. We can maybe do a side by side here. I'm giving you editing work of your own podcast.
Great.
Okay. So, over time, our facial expressions etch onto the face. Usually by the time we're like 16, 17. So it's not like old people wrinkles.
Yeah.
So, like if someone's seeking social approval their whole life, this is how we seek approval from other people.
That's why I have the line on my forehead.
Yeah, because I'm seeing a social person. You see a psychopath?
Beautiful. Wrinkle-free.
Yes. It looks like Botox in a psychopath. You see a person that spent their whole life super happy and in full enjoyment. You're going to see these crow's feet here from smiling all the time.
On the side of the eyes.
Yeah, you see somebody who's been depressed or angry. You're going to see this muscle right here forms these two wrinkles. This is called the glabella. It forms these two wrinkles. So you'll see lifetimes of behavioral patterns etched onto the face. I call this facial etching. And when somebody's depressed, you see it on the face. But skepticism makes us squeeze the lower eyelid up like this. And you can see this in anybody. I have no idea whether it's proven science or not. My science is I've done research on this for 30,000 hours in real life on facial expression. But skepticism squeezes this lower eyelid up. So somebody, the less skeptical someone who's spent their lifetime, this is my theory, so grain of salt, the more suggestible that person is. In the psychopath. You see a person that spent their whole life super happy and I'm giving you editing work of your own podcast.
Great.
Okay. So over time, our facial expressions etch onto the face. Usually by the time we're like 16, 17. So it's not like old people wrinkles.
Yeah.
So like if someone's seeking social approval their whole life, this is how we seek approval from other people.
That's why I have the lines on my forehead.
Yeah, because I'm seeing a social person. You see a psychopath? Blank forehead.
Beautiful. Wrinkle-free.
Yes. It looks like Botox in a psychopath. You see a person that spent their whole life super happy and in full enjoyment. You're going to see these crow's feet here from smiling all the time.
On the side of the eyes.
Yeah, you see somebody who's been depressed or angry. You're going to see this muscle right here forms these two wrinkles. This is called the glabella. It forms these two wrinkles. So you'll see lifetimes of behavioral patterns etched onto the face. I call this facial etching. And when somebody's depressed, you see it on the face. But skepticism makes us squeeze the lower eyelid up like this.
Never outgunned.
And you can see this in anybody. I have no idea whether it's proven science or not. My science is I've done research on this for 30,000 hours in real life on facial expressions. But skepticism squeezes this lower eyelid up here. So somebody, the less skeptical someone who's spent their lifetime, this is my theory, so grain of salt, the more suggestible that person is. And I think
your
suggestible people are happy.
Okay. Your theory is that people with lower eyelids are more suggestible, but the idea that people who are skeptical for most of their life have different lower eyelids, that's not your theory. That's widely accepted amongst people, or
well, the facial expression of skepticism is widely agreed upon.
Okay.
That expression's etch onto the face is agreed upon.
What are some of the signs that people can see in the people in their lives when they look at them? The lower eyelids is one thing, or crow's feet you mentioned.
Happiness.
This
consistent seeking of social approval. I could see somebody 30 yards away and see if they're even 30 years old, 20 years old, those lines in the forehead, and know that that person will be very easy to start a conversation with. Because all I've got to do is go, oh, hey, how are you? And the eyebrow flash is repeated by humans 90% of the time without the other person knowing. Just walking by a total stranger saying, oh, hey, good morning. Their eyebrows will instinctively go up, especially if they're a social person.
Hello, my name is Adam Ferrari, Chief Executive Officer of Phoenix Energy. I look forward to you joining us at our next investor webinar, where you can drill deeper into our 9% annual interest rate bond offerings and and see how our company has become an emerging leader in the oil and gas industry. In 2024, Phoenix Energy rose to become the 11th most prolific oil and gas operator in the Williston Basin, one of America's top producing regions. We are now right alongside industry giants like ConocoPhillips and EOG and plan to continue rising in the rankings. Our daily production rates have risen to as high as 18,000 barrels of oil per day. We've sold more than 4 million barrels, and we're just getting started. We hope to see you at our brief webinar. In less than 1 hour, you will learn more about our 9 to 15% annual interest rate bond offering and the U.S. oil and gas sector. These Regulation D 506E bond offerings are open to accredited investors. Our team will guide you through the details of how to get started. Sign up for the webinar and start your journey with Phoenix Energy today.
An enemy is unstoppable.
At Action Industries, we know how important it is for your orders to arrive on time and intact to keep your business thriving. That's why we proudly offer our industry-leading delivery service by ATEC, which is designed around low freight fees, delivery time consistency, and peace of mind that products will safely arrive at your location. Powered by our own fleet of trucks, strategically located distribution centers, and on-demand customer support, your operation will benefit from extremely low freight fees that are unmatched by other distributors. From long-length items to heavy-duty parts, we handle the products that need the most care. Our A and B scheduled delivery routes cover the majority of the U.S. east of the Rockies. This is more than just delivery. It's a commitment to excellence from Action Industries and their innovative ATEC service. Contact your regional account manager today to find out what Action Industries can do for you.
Then if we see anything in the center here, this glabella is a person with anger, depression, because that's the facial expression of anger, squeezes those two muscles together. And if you ever see a horseshoe muscle, like right here, it's very hard to fake. I try to do it all the time. But if you just type in grief muscle into Google Images, you'll have something to slap on the screen right now. That's a grief muscle. What you're looking at right now.
I'm potentially going to do it a few seconds after you said right now.
Okay. So that's it. And you can determine suggestibility by the lower eyelid. And I've tested this with 3 hypnotists who have tested it out on over 15,000 hypnotic subjects. And it is 100%, according to these 3 guys, 100% correct. So those are the most easily hypnotized people in a crowd, because they do like comedy hypnosis in a bar where they like bring people up on stage, like, oh, you're smelling a fart and it smells real bad, that kind of stuff. So that they've come back and said that is the most accurate predictor of suggestibility I've ever seen. The smoothness of the lower eyelid. Yeah. So there's a young lady in here running our podcast behind a big screen there. Also smooth lower eyelids. Suggestible. I'm very suggestible. So I'm not like vaccinated because I learned all this stuff where I can't get manipulated or anything. I'm just as susceptible as anybody else. But it is a great indicator, and I used it in my fictional book called Phrase 7, which will be a TV series soon. This bad guy uses the lower eyelid to determine who's going to be the easiest to make into a killer using hypnosis.
I bet that not only in the face can we tell what emotions people consistently feel, but also the posture, because it's part of the whole mix. If you have someone with, I mean, it's obvious, you have someone who's hunched over, you have someone who tucks in their tailbone or something. All these are indicators, right?
Yeah. One of the biggest ways to see this is if you see constant behavior of limbs protecting arteries. So the upper bone of the arm, this is called the humerus, squeezes into the torso on a regular basis to protect the brachial artery. The person's shoulders are raised up a little bit to protect the artery a little bit more. Yep.
The neck.
Yep.
Something else like that.
Yeah, and you think that's how primates will show each other that you're not a threat. I'm challenging you. Humans do it too. Like
do that.
Oh, what's up? I'm opening all these arteries at the same time. I'm not threatened at all. So that's when you see bar fights start to happen. It's like that's artery exposure behavior. And you see it in baboons, bonobo chimps, human beings, exactly the same.
Why suggesting people have you? What do you think? Is it because there's only less masks and less on defense?
I think they spend their life they're more present instead of being like screening every piece of information that's coming in.
They're not vigilant and on guard.
Yeah.
Shut down.
Because they're vulnerable and able to experience life's ups and downs.
Yeah, and I think the vulnerability is the pathway to a better life. No matter what mask you wear. You can force yourself to be more vulnerable. People like it. And there's some disgusting belief in our culture that if I'm on social media, I've got to pretend to be perfect. That's the only way I'm going to be liked, is to pretend to be perfect. And we were doing this yesterday. The friend that we were talking about, my friend, going through Instagram, he's asking me to profile women for him and going through all these accounts. I'm like, no, this woman is a complete simulation. This woman is absolutely fake. Everything, personality, everything's fake. And it's, if you ever watch the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial, that is the difference between someone who's open to being wounded. Johnny Depp is open to everything. Very vulnerable. Openly talks about the drugs and all that stuff.
And on the flip side, the person that takes a shit on the bed.
Yeah, and pretends to be perfect at the same time. And flawless.
You can't do both at the same time.
Yeah.
Take a shit on someone's bed.
Allegedly.
Oh, that was not confirmed?
Yeah. It was never fully confirmed. So we need to make sure you say that.
Yeah. Wow, fascinating. Vulnerability. Maybe you could segue into psychedelics and also your journey with your brain disease.
Yeah.
So I forgot to mention this last time in the episode. You have a neuroscience degree from Harvest. Why'd you get into that?
Feel better with.
What do these orthopedic shoes say? Oh, what's bingo? Careful down the stairs, Glynis. You know what I say? I say peep this fashionable foot pain relief. Guru has a patented heel design that helps relieve all types of foot pain and looks awesome. If your feet hurt, trust the Kuru Guru. That's me. Namaste.
Get award-winning YouTube TV to watch live sports and the latest shows. It's no surprise JD Power ranks us the best live streaming TV provider for customer satisfaction. Get more than cable for less than cable with YouTube TV. Try it free. Terms apply. Cancel anytime.
Never outgunned.
What's your brain disease? Like, just catch people up to speed.
I found out I had a brain disease after becoming a neuroscientist.
You don't
So
hurt him if you don't hit him.
I had been having seizures for 3 years, and these are called temporal lobe seizures. So you're not like jiggling all on the ground and shaking around and stuff like a tonic-clonic seizure. But these are absence seizures where like I leave planet Earth and like drool comes out of my mouth. And the seizures are about 60 seconds to 90 seconds. And inside of one of those seizures, it's like 3 years of memories, that brand new memories that don't exist, that my brain just now is trying to file in as real life. 3 years.
Oh, yes.
That's one seizure. And the peak of this, I had 9 seizures a day. 9 of them. To the point where I didn't know who my wife was. I looked her right in the eyes and and thought, if I just pretend like I know who she is long enough, we're going to be okay. Like, it's going to come back to me. I thought my dog was fake. Like, it broke me out of reality completely.
What do you mean it was fake?
Like, I thought that I thought that my dog was not my dog. And somebody, like, put a different dog that looks like my dog in my house.
The dog is an imposter. The dog is a spy.
Yeah. And there's so much deja vu that happens with a temporal lobe seizure to where everything is like a memory. I'm looking around all these tripods, right? So my brain would start seeing every detail in the room, the reflection off of the tape on that Amazon box right there. Every single detail is coming back from like hundreds of memories as if I'd remembered all of this. And it's so much deja vu that your brain automatically goes, the only way this is real is if someone's setting me up. Someone set this up. And right at that moment when you realize, like, you're thinking like somebody set this up, bam, the seizure starts. Coming back from like hundreds of memories as if I'd remembered all of this. And it's so much deja vu that your brain automatically goes, the only way this is real is if someone's setting me up. Someone set this up. And right at that moment when you realize, like, you're thinking like somebody set this